Welcome back to episode 81, season 7 of the Geometric View. Today we have another extraordinary episode from EPEMC Extended Plasma Electromagnetic Cosmology. You can find us on Rumble at The Pulse, and you can find us on YouTube at the Geometric View right here. Thank you for being here. So the 2022 Electromagnetic Universe World Expo was amazing. We'll be releasing the
link is in the show notes below
on this channel.
Let's get into the circuit.
The Geometric
We
View.
appreciate your support. The best way to donate to us is on PayPal. Just send money directly to goldenscaling@gmail.com. Thank you very much.
And we'll have a link that we can provide to Rex of our conversation. Right. So you've been doing research to get ready for Wednesday's show on this announcement of fusion, which Glenn Beck has been asking whether it's some kind of leftist wag the dog situation again. So what have you found?
Well, I guess if you start with, the premise of what you just described in terms of a wag the dog type situation, obviously the science has been around for quite some time with which they're describing. Okay, and that's just a given. We can sit here and have that discussion, or people can just start doing the research for themselves. The reality is that I guess one of the best, let me find it here. One of the best examples I could use would be APA diesel fuel to hydrogen for the Army tank fuel cell research that took place for the Army back in 2005. Right. Now, Battelle Memorial Institute started that, or initiated it, or was funded by the U.S. government to do that, and it was all, I think, 2010, almost 5 years later. Before, these are all articles that we can provide links to. Had any kind of actual research come out of it, and it goes back to we can only do this if we find a way to integrate oil into the equation. Otherwise, we're not going to do it. And that's what drives me insane. Because, as we all know, oil carries the day because that's what, the U.S. dollar is tied to. So it goes back to my comment I've made several times on this call that fusion energy will not become something that's going to be available to mankind until they, quote unquote, the tycoons and the patriarchal ass crackers that run this society, or think they run the society, find a way to slap a frickin' meter on the side of it.
Right. Correct.
So and those were small, refrigerator-sized devices that I witnessed personally myself. I viewed it myself for keeping the M1A1 Abrams tanks running. I don't know how much people know about the M1A1, but it requires like 22, 21 gallons of be purged at all times. And so those electric motors, if you're sitting idle as an M1A1, you sit idle, you've got to keep your batteries on to keep your lines purged in a wartime situation, because you need to be able to get up and go if you start getting attacked. Oh, you have to sit there and wait for the lines to all purge before you can get the vehicle moving. Now, during Iraq, the storm, of course, everything revolves around war, but the Iraq war, logistics chain, we all heard those stories about how the logistics chain and the army or the military was moving fast. Logistics chain above. That's the reality of what we're faced with, is you have a tank sitting there after covering all this ground. You're sitting there waiting for your troops to catch up, and then you have to sit overnight and get everything situated. The amount of time that those tanks are sitting there idle in a ready state, just either one or two things, either requires a massive amount of diesel or it requires a massive pull from the battery. Depending on what, threat condition
Yeah.
the actual vehicle's in.
And now they're switching to the Abrams X. So there must be some kind of hat trick that they're pulling in order to because you know that there's a lot more electronics running it's running on. So obviously they got some kind of hybrid electric engine in there. The question is, you know, exactly what is their mechanism for this, and I don't honestly know, like how are they pulling it off. Are you thinking that they have a fission reactor?
Well, I think honestly, there's multiple groups vying for control of this world. I mean, that's simple as I can put it. The actors, the bad actors that all came over after World War II, and then go ahead.
More than one group wants to be the New World Order, and that includes a fractured deep state that doesn't want to work with each other, but they certainly all think that they should be the New World Order too. So right. it's a multi-tier New World Order anymore, folks. Is the point?
Yeah, and then you have the whole the right wing agenda versus the left wing agenda, but at the end of the day, it's really about the truth of how we've been manipulated, programmed, and guided down certain roads, and the truth has been withheld at every turn. And for some reason, it's almost like knowledge is power type concept. And now we have technology at a level that it's basically surpassing their lives. That's the reality of what we're faced with. So that led me into, okay, so then how possibly could, this information be kept secret? And then why would these knuckleheads running the Biden-Harris administration now choose, after 60 decades of trying to figure out fusion, all of a sudden now, we got it?
Yeah, well, because China is moving forward and they've said, screw your Federal Reserve System. We're going to do what we want to do. And they're releasing probably what they stole from the U.S. government, right? I mean, it's well known that they steal from the U.S. government on the regular. They probably found something that was stored on some unsecured server because, again, asshats. And they're building it out. It's well known that they're building a fusion power plant over there, and suddenly like, oh look, we discovered fusion. I think that they're playing catch up with some plans that China is moving forward rather quickly on, based on technology that they probably stole from the what's now Space Force. Before, maybe the whole reason why we rolled up the Space Force is that the Air Force was getting hacked on the regular. Maybe,
but I think it goes a little bit deeper. I think
they stole the F-35. If they could steal the F-35, which should have been the most top secret project at the time, why wouldn't they be able to steal, some old shit that's been sitting on an old server? I gotta mute myself a second.
No worries. I think if we look at the history of things, the main players that were involved in the latest announcement from Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, which is out there in California. You look at the concept of the science that goes into it, the actual science that goes into it. And so I want to bring up a term called exotic vacuum objects. Okay. Now, Dr. Harold Puthoff and Kenneth Radford Shoulders. These two individuals came out with this, a while back. Shoulders, let me see, he passed away not too long ago. He passed away in 2013, unfortunately. But just a little quick 2 seconds on that individual. He was an experimental physicist. Right? No big deal. It's good stuff for him. Researcher at MIT. Right? But then he goes out to work and moved in 1958. Works out at the Applied Physics Laboratory created by Charles Rosen at Stanford Research Institute, SRI, Stanford Research Institute, right? Now, he also worked with the CIA, that's listed here on Wikipedia, and Vertitech. Anyway, so he had all these different things, and he worked alongside with Hal Puthoff. Hal Puthoff, as we know, if I'm not mistaken, and I'll pull it up here just to make sure I don't say anything I'm not supposed to. Make sure I'm getting it all right. Go pull up the Sapphire website, sapphireproject.com, and you'll pull up a gentleman sitting right in the middle of that team. His name is Hal Puthoff. That's the gentleman that they reference on multiple occasions. Both Claridge, Childs, Ryder did. Unfortunately, James has passed away. Reference that individual, Hal Puthoff. Now, let's go again. Back to Ken Shoulders, who was Hal's friend and compatriot. Ken Shoulders, right? SRI, Stanford University. That rolls into Finnegan Instruments from Lawrence Livermore Laboratory. Finnegan Instruments produced a guy by the Robert Emmett Finnegan, and Ken Shoulders became partners there at SRI International. Now they issued out the quadrupole mass spectrometer, right? That's basically a way to, you know what a mass spectrometer is. But they invented that thing, and then they sold it out. Their number one client was, take a guess, the EPA. EPA bought and purchased the majority of their devices as fast as they could produce them. The EPA bought them up, used them for testing, quote unquote, testing water, right? And then also the time of flight, the QTOF mass spectrometer came from that, and that measures actual velocity. There's your velocity key. So this thing measures velocity of a spectromagnetic wave. Velocimetry is a field that is spawned from that, basically being able to measure fluids in a dynamic medium, the speed at which fluids function through a dynamic medium. All good and stuff, right? All fun. What are you talking about, John? No clue, right? But then you got the individuals right now as we speak. This is the first. She's the Secretary, the United States Secretary of Energy, right? She's a Canadian-American lawyer, born in Canada, went to the University of UC Berkeley, right? That individual is who's now currently sitting at the Secretary of Energy, who's sitting there pushing forward and making this announcement from Lawrence Livermore, right? She was a Michigan, governor of Michigan, the 47th governor of Michigan, and then the Attorney General of Michigan. And we see how well that state has done. I'm just pointing out the obvious. Same individual also. Harvard School, went to Stanford University. So she as well. U.S. Department of Energy. Where's it at? It's right here. County Corporation. Berkeley, Stanford University.
And she's obviously not an idiot, but idiot ideas and idiot philosophies, abusers of our nation, do flock together. So the question is it a conspiracy, or is it just the habit of idiocy flocking together and collecting with it some of our best minds and perverting them down a path of injustice and corruption?
Right. So that led me down to this Atari Prakbar, I think is her name. Arati Prahabhakar. Arati Prahabhakar is an American engineer serving as the 12th director of the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy and the science advisor to the president. Right? She was the former head of DARPA. Good for her. She was also head of the National Institute of Standards and Technology. Right? How does that matter? What does that even matter? She was also the head fellow at the Center for Advanced Study in Behavioral Sciences at Stanford University, SRI, yet again. No big deal. Let's keep going.
Well, I think it's interesting.
So from that, she started another firm called Actuate, ACTUATE. It's a nonprofit organization underneath Actuate that goes into their partners and their ventures that underneath Actuate. I would just like to read them off so you'll hear. The Alfred P. Sloan Foundation, the David, Lucille, and Packard Foundation, New Schools Venture Fund, the Waverly Foundation, Waverly Street Foundation, and the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative. How about that?
Yeah.
So that's what she started. She started that. She was the former head of DARPA, former head of NIST, and then the former CEO of a company called Raychem. Are you familiar with Raychem?
No, I've not heard of that one.
Yeah, Raychem, Raychen, right? Raychem.
That's Raytheon Chemical?
No, it is not. So they want to make sure that they are not confused by that, but through history. But that was one of their big things. Is we're not Raytheon. It's not. But the guy Paul Cook, who started Raychem, graduated from Stanford University, and he is part of SRI's board of directors. So this individual who's sitting at the highest level of advisement for the science policy of the United States of America is tied to SRI International on multiple levels. The same thing with the Secretary of Energy, tied to SRI International on multiple levels. You have Ken Shoulders, started and began with one of the first employees of SRI International. CIA, became best friends with a guy named Robert Finnegan, and they started Finnegan Instruments. They sold all of these quadrupole mass spectrometers to the EPA to supposedly help monitor our water supply, which we see how well that's going. So you have all of these connections right there, all wrapped around Stanford University and SRI International for all of these individuals pushing forward. And here's the beauty of it. From this announcement, $624 million was allocated to Rochester Labs, or laser labs. So what these fools are doing, you have the sapphire chamber, which is obviously refrigerator size. Eventually, I'm sure they could get it down to about a refrigerator size component that would be able to produce and provide energy at the level to which they've advertised on multiple occasions and had tested by multiple third-party independent test sites. They could be able to do this with very little additional funding. But instead, get up in front of a stage with a bunch of actors talking about how they were able to generate temperatures at 200 times the temperature of the core of the sun. And actors get up on a stage and talk about how they were able to do this thing, but only by use of a 3-football field, massive piece of equipment that requires very, very sensitive and highly, highly dangerous lasers to be able to point at each other. After 60 years of trying to get this right, we finally did it, but it only takes a big old bunch of stuff to do it, and it's very hard, and we got a very, very long, long road ahead of us, folks. These are a bunch of actors on a stage making sure that the transition from their oil dollar gets moved over to whatever dollar it is or whatever asset it is they base this next currency on.
Digital, yeah, it's a digital currency that'll be based on, it'll be basically our AIM idea of the jewel coin, except for, for what we want to do with our energy project. We're using it to track, services. They want to use it to track your quote unquote consumption. But instead of consumption, it's actually just the joules of energy that are being provided because there's some other means there. It's not a fuel anymore. I mean, there's fuel costs because of waste product and all that, but it's not.
The hydrogen's reused on the sapphire chambers, so you don't have any fuel costs. You have equipment costs to be able to build and purchase and maintain the piece of equipment. And that would be where the majority of this will go. But we don't have the logistics supply chain here in the United States to be able to support the equipment needs to be able to put these things all over the place. We sold that out to China by the same people, by SRI International. You can click on their site, goes right to their, translates it all to Chinese for you. Japan, Japanese. You there?
Join you as soon as possible. Keep telling the audience about what research you're finding, because I think it's important to get down to the thing. And I'll ask you a question to get you going. Do you think Orion Energy sold out to the military-industrial complex? Yes, no, and which direction would are you going to take to research and to look into that? So, and I will rejoin you as soon as I can.
Yeah, so I don't know. It's a good thought process or exercise to go down, but I think the reality is that the disruption, I think that the team up there was convinced that the disruption of this technology coming out too soon, too fast, would cause such a disruption to the economy and the markets, because it's, I don't know how to describe it, but if you don't have to pay for energy anymore on any level, it changes the game of the day-to-day human being going from place to place. They don't have to worry about, do they have enough gas money to get from one location to the other? We are able to travel by the Constitution, is very clearly we should be able to and allowed to travel unencumbered. But instead, we're constantly having to pay, even if it's a toll or if it's through the use of gasoline, to be able to get from point A to point B. We have to pay to be able to move about this great nation or across this world. This has been a commodity that has been utilized to keep everyone enslaved at the core level of their being. And we have to break free from it. We have to be able to demonstrate that you can crack JP8 and make hydrogen, create fuel from that process. You can basically take water and power your vehicles. These technologies need to be funded. These endeavors need to be promoted. But instead, they control every single ebb and tide. They allow certain individuals to break off and go try something. Good luck. Go ahead. If you can convince other rich people to give you some of their money to do this, but you're never going to get any support from the government. You're definitely never going to get a constant media blitz like what we just saw with Lawrence Livermore. They sat there and blitzed the media out there left and right, up, down, and center. Reuters, Washington Post, New York Times, CNN, everything, you name it, it was on it. Talking about this great new discovery. So it's a political versus science issue. We can sit here all day long and have a discussion of whether or not the science is sound or not. But it never is going to get anywhere, because the politics, these individuals that have run and operated and maintained control of our nation and the rest of this world through the use of force, money, propaganda, and just their own greed and power-hungry ways. They've never done things that were good for humanity. Even whenever somebody comes forward and tries to do anything good for humanity, it gets sucked up, washed away, and recoded, rebranded, and shoved right back out the door with greed on top of it, to make sure that these individuals can control the flow for which that technology goes. And that speaks right into why Elon has been able to have so much success and been able to he was pushed to the forefront as the icon for this whole whatever. Everybody thinks that kid's a genius. And he may be smart, but he's a puppet, period, plain and simple. There is no doubt that guy is a puppet, nothing more. He's being utilized to maintain the concept of quote unquote space. He's being utilized to maintain what NASA was doing before and hide the fact that for decades, humanity was lied to and stolen from. Stolen. We were robbed left, right, up, down, and center. Our parents' parents have been robbed, told we have no choice but to pay these taxes. You don't get to have a choice. Your choice is when you voted. And then we see that that whole system was always rigged, whether it was rigged through the use of propaganda and pushing individuals that did not need to be there or were compromised and then painted a different picture, lies, or the actual tallying of the numbers was compromised. Either way, these individuals that got put into positions of power across our nation have been done so through the ebb and tide and flow of these absolute monsters that only want to control and ensure that either they have a stooge that doesn't know their ass from a hole in the ground in that position of authority, or they have somebody that they can control. And it's as simple as that. And so back to the Sapphire guys, I think they got down a certain road. Hal Puthoff, they referenced him on multiple occasions. They're pushing forward on this science. But the moment that that stuff was supposed to go live, the moment that stuff was supposed to be able to be put on the ground to be utilized in any way that would help and benefit humanity, the reality of what that science says comes to the forefront. Everybody has a chance to look at it and see, wait a minute, you're telling me X plus Y equals Z. Well, then you guys should have been able to do this decades ago. Not only should you have, you could have. You did. But instead of humanity benefiting from it, we instead raped the environment with oil and gas drilling into the ground, mines that didn't need to be there, constant stream of disruptive to the society and the environment, left and right, all for the sake of generating a constant flow of energy to this concept of fiat money, period. And the moment we break away from it and go to a digital currency, that flow is now shattered into 1,000 pieces. You're going to shatter that flow. And all of these, no other way to describe it, but basically POSs, as you described them, all of these POSs, they seem to be in different ways, shapes, or forms trying to scramble for who's going to be able to pick up the pieces of that shattered energetic flow once it does go into 1,000,000 pieces. We haven't even talked about or got into the religious aspects of all this, where Trump built the third temple and, you know, they printed a coin with his head on it in Israel. And, you know, they've got this whole, you know, he's a trumpet, you know, the whole religious connotation behind how they're trying to, either they are trying to push the three major religions to a massive war, or they're pushing it forward through the Ukraine-Russia conflict. Whatever the scenario is, they're pushing the United States through limiting the logistic supply and taking away, you know, different, I don't know, exposing all of this stuff, you know, and they're taking away from the day-to-day understanding of man. And we have no choice. I mean, we all need to do it. We all have to come out to the light at some point. The problem is they're trying to see how much can be achieved, how slow they can roll this out now that the, you know, Pandora's box has been opened. And I truly believe the Sapphire guys, by taking their project as far as they did and providing as much sound, say evidence, but processes in their scientific discoveries. They provided the sound, here's the processes, here's the third party. You know, they went about it in a way that has been unlike most other groups. Very scientifically and very straightforward. But at the same time, all of that, very much so, could have just been a show. Because that technology has been around for a while, it's obvious. Now, whether or not anybody's gotten on the ground and actually pulled the strings and pushed to get it funded to be able to provide proof of that technology is a different story. Not out in the open like that. Not out in the open like Sapphire. Lockheed Skunk Works might have done it behind the doors. Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, any of these groups that run out these quote unquote UFO sites, you know, that's where they've been handling and maintaining all these technologies for the longest of times. Anti-gravity using mercury, whatever. That's what those are. That's what those sites are. They hide it behind the need for national security. Well, you got to have security. We're under attack. There's a boogeyman in every corner. So we got to have all the security. But in reality, they just maintain the ebb and tide and flow with which humanity progresses. And that's a problem. Because that's not part of God's plan. That's their plan. It's man's plan, not the universe's. The universe has other plans, and that's all coming out right now as we speak. Slowly but surely, the universe's plans are materializing. And these absolute, greedy, warmongering, controlling, manipulative, evil pricks that have been operating behind the shadows to maintain their positions and lifestyles of basic debauchery and greed. Nothing more. They only want to stay and maintain their positions in their lives and maintain those positions for their families and their, the families that come after them. All the time they do it on the backs of the individual like you and me and anybody else really listening to this, any of the guys in the group. We all sit here and try to struggle every day just to be able to put food on the plate in front of us. All the while, it doesn't have to be this bad or this hard. Anyway, they've all done this, and it's a combination. It's not like you can go stick a finger on it and say, well, this is why. It's a combination of lies in order to cover lies, in order to cover lies, in order to cover more lies. And it takes lies to cover lies. And nobody, the hard times make soft men or soft men make hard times, whatever. I don't know, that whole parable. The reality is that these individuals started this ball rolling, and we're at the end of that ball that has hit the bottom. It has shattered into 1,000 pieces, and the people are waking up across this planet to the lies that have been told to them. And NASA can try all damn day to sit here and sugarcoat it, try to make it look like it's something else. They can go get this puppet Elon to have him create this concept of SpaceX and have him shoot just as many rockets or more rockets or bring a rocket back now. I don't know, whatever the hell they're doing this week with their CGI and bullshit. But all of it's a farce. It's a show to keep us all trapped inside of Plato's cave so that we stop realizing the reality of who we are as human beings, one by one, individually. And then the power that comes behind associating with your fellow man, getting together, having common thoughts, common feelings, common emotions, creating that goes into sync with one another in an energetic form. That energetic wave then is very powerful. They've hijacked it with sports. They've hijacked it with media. They've hijacked those common emotions and those common feelings that we should be sharing with each other.
So, believe it or not, I actually heard a surprising amount of what you were talking about, despite I had to go in our room. I want to talk about exactly what you're talking about, because over the weekend I did more silly Simon. And one of the areas of research when I'm under that influence is that I'm looking for signs of the holographic, and I already talked about that once. Didn't get those same revelations this time, but I'm also always looking for signs of the program interrupt. And this time everything was about the ultra real and liquid truth. The ultra real, I discovered, is exactly the same state as my remote viewing was of that technology, that goggles technology that we talked about.
Right.
And then in the liquid truth, last time and this time confirmed. The last time it was all about, I was thinking about GoogleNet and how you can compare the takeover of the internet by Google with the program interrupt. This time I was thinking about the program interrupt, and I realized the Microsoft layer to it. The color schemes taking over the. I know it doesn't make as much sense when you're totally sober, but it is important.
What you're referring to is louche. It's the relationship to the colors and the way that those colors invoke certain frequencies through your vision and through your understanding and observation of those colors. They then invoke certain frequency or harmonic frequencies for your body.
So I think that's why I have assigned to the MES and to AIM the same colors, is that we want through the EPEMC process to take back the program control from Microsoft and from the conglomerates that have directed us in a certain direction. And then over time, instead of the expansion of the electronics market, for example, or an expansion of operating systems into more power and control of the individual, what they've done is they've ferried us down this road of the operating system gets stupider and stupider and treats you more like an idiot. Every iteration of the Windows, every iteration of the Office, they take away features instead of adding features. And it's part of the entire takeover of our society. It's like ferry us into this almost cattle pen. It's like a big herd that has to go through a single file so they can all become slaughtered. And it's not just about the education system. It's of course there's profits involved, but for them it's more than that. So that's why they're willing to give away a bunch of stuff, because in the end, the outcome is that they're all buying back this data that helps to control the individual's mind.
Yeah, I think
back those colors is so important.
I do. I think so too. I think a great example of what you're trying to describe there is this Arati Prabhakar. I'm saying her name wrong. I apologize for that. But so, she, if you listen to me, she was the Center for Advanced Study in the Behavioral Sciences at Stanford. Why would a physicist, she graduated from university, with a physics degree, but why would a physicist need to be put on a board and learn and have an advanced study behind behavioral sciences?
Just because, it's the way things are done. Everything's about mind control.
Right. I agree with that. And so that individual now is the one voices pushing forward on this Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory announcement. Right? Now, back to what you were saying, and in terms of this, though, I firmly believe this individual went in with good intent to her world and to her career and into her path. But being caught up in that flow of that energetic negativity, she's able to go through and look at a book, memorize the stuff inside of the book, and recall it very easily. And that puts her ahead of the class. It puts her ahead of the group, that recallability. But the one thing that so many individuals have lost traction on to this day is who put that information down in that book to begin with. Nobody's looking outside the box saying, wait a minute, maybe there was a reason why they're describing mesons this way, or the Higgs boson this way, or they're describing an electron this way. No one's asking those imaginative questions because they don't have an imagination. Imagination was given up a long time ago. That was given up to the ghost for the sake of being able to recall. All of our schools were functioning in that way. The universities function in that way. Had everything to do with your ability to recall. And anybody that went and got a liberal arts degree that had any kind of concept of imagination have been demonized in the media since I can't even know when. Don't get me wrong, because they don't fit into the society of 9 to 5, go work your ass off to be able to give to the man. They don't like that concept. They don't know how to properly express it. And so they rebel against it and they fight against it. And so they get the liberal arts degree and they realize, oh man, I don't know what to do now. Because society works against those individuals who have imagination. So this lady, Prabhakar, has, I guarantee you, very little imagination. And that's why she's at the highest level of science advisory in this nation right now.
That's an interesting idea.
And imagination is everything to do with colors. It's everything to do with colors. It's your ability to receive what you're seeing and manipulate it into the color schemes that you choose, energetically, every which way. Otherwise, you just look at things as black and white, like on a piece of paper inside of a book. And never question where that book came from. Because that would require you to see things in different colors besides black and white. They've hijacked our field, made our money green. At least we got the heart chakra hitch. Basically the heart chakra was hijacked a long time ago with the green. You go to these foreign countries, like go to Qatar. Each denomination has a different color. Why? Because the government there is completely different than it is here. They don't need your heart and mind. They got you by the balls in those countries, so they don't care what color it is. They put the rulers on the denomination and people from their past that they can manipulate stories about, but that's about it. And then they change those every time they get, but they don't have to hijack the heart chakra. Here, you got to win the hearts and minds.
Do you think that it's really that intentional, or do you think that it's just that all people use these colors, and so all people naturally gravitate towards how can I use that for my own benefit or for my own advantage? I mean, to what degree do we assume an actual conspiracy on the part of Program Interrupt versus if you already know how to interrupt someone's position, you can do it subconsciously, and then pretty soon the entire society is gaslighting instead of just a few bad actors. Pretty soon regular people are gaslighting each other and acting like sociopaths.
Yeah, that's, it's the frequency with which they're surfing. So to answer your question, I don't know. I think initially, because the intent was there by the individual small groups. You got to remember, man, there's a lot of time that's passed. Population has grown. Technology's advanced. We have moved from one paradigm to another. And so now to look at things from the paradigm we're in and compare it to the paradigm we were in it's not necessarily disingenuous. It's just not really telling the whole story. So to go back and say, well, did they all come together and decide green was going to be the color of the dollar because it was the heart? Yes, I think so. I think it was 2 or 3 guys that ultimately made that decision, not like 50 and 60 and 100, but it was like 2 or 3 folks that made the decision, and that's what they stuck with. And it was very much so for the reason of the frequency of that particular scheme of color. Now, was that the universe's making? Was that something the universe was doing because the negative energy fields of the universe? Was the intent initially good? So that's why it was the heart chakra's color to begin with the green back. Was their intent necessarily good to begin with? And then it just hijacked by POSs and bad players that manipulated that energetic flow for their own devices and for their own means and for their own personal benefit. And so initially, maybe it had been a decent intent initially, but I don't see how. I don't know. All I can say is there's a reason it's green. That's all I can say. Same reason why the guys who won the world, the whatever, I don't know, Super Bowl, the NFL, same people that win that every year. It's based upon what outcome the script writers want to see take place energetically, or whose turn it is as an owner to be able to have some money in their pockets energetically flow to them. You go back and look at it. Why Nick Saban is a great example. This guy, great coach. Why was he not able to make it work at the NFL? Because he didn't have the same folks structuring the outcomes as he did in college football.
Right.
Different folks, different strokes, so to speak. And he wasn't playing their game.
Again, that goes back in my mind to the Chinese concept of the Shi, and that we need to figure out how to calculate the total Shi in the field, on account of, there are different elements of the Shi have different kind of dimensionality. I haven't figured out how yet to produce that vector equation. But
I'll tell you this, yeah, I hear you.
If we combine that effort with the change theory, I believe that's the best actual way, aside from, of course, just having a buttload of money, to actually reversing this situation worldwide.
Are you familiar with the time of flight concept?
Time of flight, referring to specifically
spectrometers. Damn, John, get it out.
No, don't tell me about what you're talking about.
Give me a second. I'm pulling it up. So, again, back to the Robert Emmett Finnegan and Ken Shoulders, both CIA guys. Well, Ken Shoulders was listed definite CIA, but both of them SRI International, so Stanford Research Institute, right? So, again, that's, to me, the only way to describe that is obvious, what you call it. Deep state action going on there. Here we go. Time of flight. So going back to the science on it. So time of flight is a measurement of the time taken by an object, particle, or wave, be it acoustic, electromagnetic, to travel a distance through a medium. Right. So it's laser range finding, basically, but it's based upon the traveling object may be detected directly via an ion detector in a mass spectrometry, or indirectly, so the indirect time of flight, by light scattered from an object in a laser Doppler velocimetry. Sorry, these are words I was raised in the South, man. We was the lowest common denominator in terms of schooling system down there. But ultimately, so that's, and velocimetry is the measurement of the velocity of fluids. Now, this task is often taken for granted and involves far more complex processes than one might expect. It is often used to solve fluid dynamic problems and study fluid networks. Separated the heavens from the earth, the waters from the above and below, God did. So above the waters above us, which H3, I guess. Water in the middle is O2, and then down below is H2O. We have multiple layering existing right in front of our faces. And the time of flight concept for spectrometers is a way to measure that through utilizing magnetic, the MRIs or the planar Doppler or whatever, you know what I mean? Whatever you want to use, neutron time of flight scattering. You can use, cometics. But the equation, going back to your equation question, I'm not mistaken, man. Are you familiar with Mathieu functions?
No.
Or is it not to be confused with Mathieu? So Mathieu functions, sometimes called angular Mathieu functions, are solutions of Mathieu's differential equation, where A and Q are parameters. They were first introduced by Emile Leonard Mathieu, Frenchy, who encountered them while studying vibrating elliptical drumheads. Right? So they have applications in many fields of physical science, such as optics, quantum mechanics, and general relativity. So they intend to occur in problems involving periodic motion or in the analysis of partial differential equation boundary value problems possessing elliptic symmetry. So your time of flight concept I was talking about a second ago measuring, utilizing the concept of time-of-flight spectrometers, doubled up and working with the wonderful Mathieu equations, as well as the D equals CT, over 2, distance, time, all that stuff, sine or the cosine or theta, whatever you want to use in order to produce the basic time of flight principles in a laser rangefinder. But it's all there. All you got to do is just plug it in. So what this tells me, this information being so basic and so generic and from the, excuse my language, the fucking 50s and beyond.
I'm at a clinic, so keep that.
Oh, sorry, buddy. But yeah, all this information being so readily available, it shows clearly that this Lawrence Livermore laboratory great announcement that was posted all over every news article, newspaper, outlet, internet, media, whatever you can come up with in order to shove it into our brains, was absolutely 100% show and tell, nothing more. You asked, did I think the Sapphire guys are whatever? I don't know. All I do know is this is some show and tell we got going on. And until these individuals stop it, you know what I'm saying, and start telling the truth about the world in which we live in, we're all going to sit here. And when it comes to the energetic field and measuring these things, the way I just described it, there's a way to do it mathematically right there and using science. Because, at the end of the day, everything's a fluid medium. Everything can be explained with density and buoyancy. But one of the concerns that I have is this energetic field of everybody crying out as loud as they're crying out across the world for relief in the way that we are. I mean, if we're in a closed system energetically, it's only a matter of time before that closed system decides to release. You can't keep that contained forever. It has to release in some aspect.
Yeah, my concern, of course, is that it's released, in a violent way. But I'd like to discuss. I have another patient come in. Let Buddy interact with what you said. And when I come back, I want to discuss. I want to discuss the mimsicality with what you were just describing. That we find a way that is different than pure consumerism, different than colonialism, because ultimately the program that you're describing is nothing more than neocolonialism. And now we're seeing a rise of neo-feudalism, which means that there's a lack of advancement out of a certain range of ideas. It's almost as if, how we have a limit in which colors we can see, because we don't see IR and we don't see UV. It's almost as if we're circling around the toilet bowl of bad ideas, and these bad ideas aren't that far removed from plunder economy, divine right to rule, and using slavery in order to make progress. And so we've got to describe a new whimsical method of achievement that isn't pure. It's not that I'm against consumer. It's against pure consumerism and pure materialism. And that's why MIMS is so important, because part of the philosophy is the spiritual. It's right there, built into the name. So when I come back, that's what I want to talk about. But good morning, buddy.
Good morning, guys.
Yeah,
morning,
come in, buddy.
How you guys doing this morning?
Yeah, I'm getting there.
I'm doing pretty well.
I'm on my range giving again this morning.
But it's going good. It's going well. We started off by talking about fusion, so maybe Jonathan, you want to catch him up, and I'll be back. I promise.
Yeah, where'd you come in at, buddy?
Well, I could pick up a little bit off of what you said. I think you're talking about is different ways to go about organizing societies.
Well, what I was basically pointing out was how this Jennifer Granholm, this Arati Prabhakar, she's the, let's see, what is she? The White House Office of Science and Technology Policy And then the Jennifer Granholm's the Secretary of Energy. You know, these individuals that are making this announcement recently for the Lawrence Livermore fusion discovery, you know, like it's in every newspaper, every article, everything, they've basically pointed out technology that's been around. We all know it. It's not hard to do what they're trying to describe, but then they get these actors up on a stage. They put a great seal of whatever eagle with stars and, you know, blue and yellow color scheme, just like, you know, the Super Bowl, just like Ukraine. You know, people don't even catch on to these color schemes. You know, there's a reason. Anyway, yeah, they put them on a stage and these actors get up there and talk about how it was 200 or 100 times hotter than the core of the sun. And it takes 3 football fields worth of equipment to be able to achieve what we achieved, but we finally did it. And it takes a whole city's power grid worth of power in order to generate just a little bit that we did. But hey, at least it's progress. You know, they give us this song and dance about how hard and how difficult it is. And we just need to be patient and eventually humanity will get there. Meanwhile, let's all maintain this concept of the green energy movement. Let's keep producing solar cells and bullshit windmills, you know, creating nothing but more and more waste. You know, it's like they're all in bed together and they don't know how to get out of bed with each other. It's like the disgusting, you know, tangled up Gordian knot.
Yeah, well, what does it have to do with the all these Michigan ladies running it? You know,
Well,
what's the
yeah. What do you mean, Michigan ladies?
Well, Jennifer Granholm's a Michigan lady.
But they all report back to Stanford University. So each and every single one of them, Jennifer Granholm, she, where's her? I got her notes on her. Here, I'll pull it up.
Yeah, they used the hell out of Whitmer. You know, like.
Yeah, so basically it all goes back to Stanford University. So if you go look up SRI International, they're a big firm, big group. They were either board of directors, or CEOs, or something dealing with either DARPA, SRI International, or let me check what Granholm did actually, because she's an interesting one. I had her up earlier. Canada. So there she is from Canada. She was your governor for a while, and then she was your general attorney, attorney general there for a while. You know, she basically was what? CNN host, you know, on CNN. Transition team for Obama. Harvard Law School, served as editor-in-chief of the Harvard Civil Rights Liberties Law Review. She's part of Dukakis's campaign. Dukakis. So, but her education is what I was really kind of thinking. 2006. I don't want to get into that. She was at Harvard, Michigan, Daniel. So, Yale University. Okay, so Granholm was asked about her preferred team to win the heavily anticipated gold medal match for the men's hockey. I don't care. Canadians men don't care. Oh, in 2010, she was made commander of the Royal Order of the Polar Star by the King of Sweden for her work in fostering relations between Michigan and Sweden to promote a clean energy economy. So that's what it was, is her father and mother, if I'm not mistaken, born in British Columbia, she attended that. So her mom and dad, it was something about her mom and dad. Hold on. It was really cool stuff. Like her mom and dad were somebody that tied into the stuff over there in Sweden.
Okay.
Anyway, so she's the main Department of Energy kind of pusher, advisor type individual right now. But, you know, Canada. So that kind of ties in a little bit with, you know, the Sapphire guys, but mostly it ties into California. And joining AARP. Yeah, Condoleezza Rice, Kansas governor, Georgia governor. So Mississippi, Kansas, and Georgia. So if you're doing anything in Kansas, then you're talking to the Koch brothers. Both. So anyway, but then this Arati Parakabahar, she was from Stanford Institute. But anyway, so that goes into Ken Shoulders. You know who Ken Shoulders is?
No.
Yeah, Ken Shoulders was kind of one of the main guys that started SRI International. Was one of the first employees for Stanford Research Institutes, worked for the CIA. But his big contribution to the world, wait for it, ladies and gentlemen, is EVOs. Exotic vacuum objects. So Kenneth, and I'm going to read this to you, dude, so buckle in. Kenneth Radford Shoulders, in collaboration with Dr. Harold or Hal E. Puthoff, so there's our boy Hal, started a research project in the early 1980s to investigate what Kenneth Shoulders eventually named the EVO, or exotic vacuum object. Now, no big deal, right? But he's CRI or CIA, SRI International, Lawrence Livermore. So Ken Shoulders went and joined up with his buddy, Mr. Finnegan, and they created Finnegan Instruments, right? Robert Emmett Finnegan. They created Finnegan Instruments that went in to build the quadrupole mass spectrometer, right?
Okay.
Now this thing, immediately the EPA came in and bought them all. They were their number one client. The EPA bought all these things to monitor, wait for it, our water supply. But which they've obviously done such a great job on that. Thank you, Michigan, right? Michigan's obviously not used them, apparently. I don't know. But from that also later came the time of flight mass spectrometer, the QTOF. And you can get into how that's done. But then, and I went over it a little bit with Ramon a second ago, how that gets into the fluid velocity of fluids, of how you can monitor utilizing a time of flight measurements and then the Mathieu equations, I guess, in conjunction with that. Using basically, it's an ion detector. It's a traveling object may be detected directly via an ion detector in mass spectrometry, or indirectly using time of flight by light scattered from an object in a laser Doppler velocimetry. Anyway, that's where I was. And then that got me down into the mesons, is a type of hadronic subatomic particle composed of equal number of quarks and antiquarks. So it's like, oh, here we go, Big Bang bullshit. I don't want to sit here and read this anymore. But it's, it's just a way that they're slapping labels on the side of things that they're discovering right now. But in reality, they're compartmentalizing the shit out of people, and they're only letting, stuff that's actually real come forward. So the EVO, back to the EVO shit, that is, again, Ken Shoulders coined that term, exotic vacuum objects, right? But go watch any of the Sapphire videos, and that's what that is. They discovered, it's a vacuum object. But then you have Lawrence Livermore coming in front of us. And, Sapphire was able to do it with those machine, I guess, eventually I'm sure it's about the size of a refrigerator. That's the device. That's what you need. You can stick it in your house. You can stick it out back. You can stick it in a power plant and take over the functionality of an actual relay station at a power plant, whatever. Put it in a nuclear plant. No more coal burning bullshit. But instead, does that happen? No. Instead, they come out with Lawrence Livermore's bullshit announcement with a bunch of actors on stage. You don't hear the Sapphire in the news. You don't hear Reuters, Washington Post, New York Times, nobody announcing shit on Sapphire. Instead, they got 2 years of fucking COVID. Sorry for the language, my bad. Oops. They got 2 years of COVID, borders shut down, mankind being suppressed, stuck in their houses, and then inundated with nothing but constant social media, battles, which is obviously a social media battle for supremacy, whether it be Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, you name it. All of them trying to push this information out there to undermine any concept of what we are as a people, but at the same time releasing a whole bunch of info. All you got to do is draw the dots. And so now Lawrence Livermore comes forward and says, "Oh, wait, we did it finally after decades. We achieved fusion, but it takes a 3 football field size piece of equipment and these multiple layers, precisionally tuned, and it takes a whole city's worth of electricity, and it's a long way away from doing anything good for humanity." but let's give it, $624 million to a laser laboratory up in Rochester. What? So then all of that is obvious that until we get these bad actors off the fucking stage, sorry for the language, until we get these bad actors, and a lot of them are just ignorant. It's not necessarily that they're, bad actors. They have decent intent, but they're not able to tap into the energetic field as if they need to in order to actually have, creative trains of thought. They're reading books and spitting out information that coming from this black and white page. They don't see things in color. They're unable to see it in color.
So they're saying that they've achieved fusion energy.
Yeah, you put 2.3 whatever kilojoules in, and you get three something out. So they were getting more energy out than they were putting in.
Oh, I think I always bleep out right there.
What's that?
Sorry, I bleeped out for a second. I couldn't hear anything.
Oh,
did you hear my question?
Yeah, they're basically saying that they put 2 point something kilojoules into the laser, into the little BB size glass tube or whatever the hell they're saying this week. And that created temperatures that exceeded the core of the sun. And they were able to, through that process, get 3 point something kilojoules out. So they were able to generate more energy than that went into it. So congratulations for them. After 60 freaking years and billions of dollars, they were able to create a bunch of people on a stage to come out and say stuff that they have done multiple times in the past in numerous laboratories across the planet. Just in different ways. And that's the reality. I pulled up an old article from Battelle. Battelle Memorial Institute was doing some research on the M1A1 Abrams for a fuel cell to keep that thing running in wartime situations. And then the Army, about 5 years later, finally get delivered a thing, but they, of course, had to have JP8 diesel fuel and cracked it using, basically the hydrogen. And through that process, that's how the Army was able to get it. As long as you incorporate oil into your thing, so that is never not a commodity. They're never not, because that's where the meter's strapped to. The U.S. dollar is based on that, and our currency being based on the oil as a commodity, whether it be a future or a current value. That's what our dollar's based off of in the U.S., as well as many other currencies. So anytime any technology came out, it was always tied in some way back to oil. And if it did not, then it did not come out, period. And that's what we're fighting against.
And what are the cryptocurrencies all tied to? Digital things?
No, see, that's a war with Google. Again, it goes, I think we're talking about that on another thing with me and Ramon on the private call. Today, it's obvious where the power lies, and it's in human knowledge and human ability and, your labor, your time, your energy, the human energy, and your focus. That's truly, you can sit here all day long and have a great idea, but until you have people coming together to work together to bring that idea to manifestation, it's basically shite. So
do you think that since that's the number one power, they're taking that power away from people worldwide in a lot of education systems, and that's the reason why a lot of the education systems are intentionally failing?
Well, it's a combination of things. Yeah, the educational systems were set up by the Rockefellers or the J.P. Morgans and these individuals. It was set up to generate workers, not thinkers. Read this material, memorize it in your brain, and regurgitate it over there, period. And it taught you through that process to answer to authority only in that form. That's why we have the legal system the way it is. It's written right here, black and white. And we use the jurisprudence, whatever. You can refer to previous cases. Well, this judge ruled on this case this way before, so therefore you have to rule on this case that way today. And nobody's going to buck that system because it's one piece of documentation after another. It's the, Black's Law, for crying out loud. They call it Black's Law, and it's the color scheming of that memorization and regurgitation without any imagination. I'm gonna write that down. That sounds good. But yeah, so the school systems were created the same way the model, like the same way Ford did it. This all stems from the studies that were done by the jackasses that ran the Nazi party over there in Germany. And before, they were doing human sociological testing on how to properly wash brains, and they brought it all here and set it all up. I mean, they had been doing it for years and years and years. I say World War II and the Nazi party, that was a byproduct. That was a means to an end for the robber barons. They just that was all, both sides of that were set up just like every other war. In order to make sure that we all fight against some other mysterious boogeyman all the time. And whenever they run out of boogeyman and we stop being able to fight war, based on boogeymen here in the materialistic world, they'll have us fighting boogeymen in the religious aspect of things. That's why the end times are written the way they are. Because they know the game, they're running it. They'll have everybody, when they run out of people wanting to fight for the sake of commodities and materialism and, patriotism and the land and the oil and the water and all these things, when everybody says, wait a minute, man, there's abundance here. We can all get along and try to work this out. And they say, yeah, but, God this, or, whatever religious aspect, Allah this, or, the Catholic religion that, or Judaism, we've got our Messiah, now he has to go conquer whatever. They'll bring religions into it, and it's just another way, and then start the whole thing back over. Right now, I think that the school systems were set up and established to, function on the Model T, Ford kind of assembly line aspect, generating not thinkers, but regurgitators.
Well, yeah, it's the 6 days a week, and you rest on the 7th day.
Yeah, but you go to school, and you got 6 different classes you go to in one day, right? They break the kids up into 6 different lessons of study so that you're never able to focus on one general practice. You always got to swap from math to science to English to spelling. You got to go through all these different ones in the same day.
Yeah.
And it's to keep your attention span low, your focus low, but at the same time pump you full of useless crap so that you never think outside the box and ask questions for yourself. Not in a real meaningful way, especially not outside of the stuff that's written down in black and white in the books. So the moment you start having imagination, or you start seeing the world in colors inside of your mind, you're able to interpret these things in color. That's when you become an outcast. That's when you become an artist. That's when you become an outlier, as Jung called them.
Yeah.
Because you're able to see past this. So the education's, but now, because information's so readily available, it's the ball's just spiraling down for them. It's a downward spiral for that whole structure that was established to keep us enslaved. They're fighting as hard as they can with the social media sites, the Instagram, the Snapchats, the Twitters, the TikTok.
Whether the system was made to keep us enslaved, which I kind of disagree. I think that the system was made to be as productive as possible. If we remember back in the 1850s, history repeats itself. We had baby incubators and we didn't have enough babies. People knew, based on the math and based on the people, the amount of people there in lots of different countries, and especially in America, there were the orphan trains and trains filled with babies to deliver to people. Where did all these babies come from? Now we're fast forward to today, and we need to do the exact same thing. I don't know if you saw the latest episode of Robert Sepper, and I think it was artificial intelligence and something along the lines of babies being born, artificial babies in the womb or outside of the womb. There's this. I think that it seems like it's for productivity. They don't care about the people. Yeah, the people are just the wheels in the cog. They're the oil inside of the machine. They don't even care about the people. So whether it was intentionally designed to keep people in line, or whether it was just designed to keep people functioning and functioning optimally functioning, it produces the same outcome. And that's we're here, and everything is assembly line based. Our days of the week, our hours, our 40 hours a week work week is based off of Henry Ford. So I love you taking this example and showing us that not only is the Henry Ford idea inside of our psyche, but it's also inside of our school, our scholastic program. It's everything.
Yeah,
it seems like again, everything's running off of it.
See, no, I hear what you're saying. I think so. That I guess the ultimate question is: was it done from a place of positive intent? Because I mean, Ramon asked that question earlier. You know, it's like, look, I think that the money supply here was intentionally colored green. You know, because it had the heart chakra kind of frequency resonation. So the green would be something that they were able to attach your intent to. Your intent is very much so motivated. That's why money is such a, I mean, you look at a dollar bill. Like I remember as a kid, I walked into the community swimming pool at our little apartment compound, and I could see it from a mile away. Somebody had left money inside the bottom of the pool. And it was like my body just instinctively knew that was cash. You know, I mean, I'm like 7, 8 at best, you know? And I just went in, and normally, you know, it's kids, you're going out, it's the early morning. We were the first ones at the pool. It's not just freezing, you know, it's not the best of things. So we always took our time getting in. No. I took off running and jumped right in. Dove to the bottom, came up, and I had $21 in cash. Because I knew, you know, I just could, your body just responded. I responded emotionally to seeing it from a distance and knew emotionally what that was in the bottom of that pool. So $21 is a lot for a kid, you know what I'm saying? I bought a lot of candy and G.I. Joe with that. But
oh yeah,
the reality is that there's an emotional tie to that color. There's an emotional tie to the way we see it and view it and picture it in our minds. And I think the question was that initially colored, you know, the US dollar colored green for the negative intent of that, to hijack that heart chakra? Or was it colored green to, you know, because, you know, a couple people decided green would be the best color because it's, you know, heart chakra related? And, you know, I think the answer to that question is that I think these guys knew really the 2 or 3 individuals that it was that decided it. You know, because you hear everybody talk. You know, astronomers use, or whatever, billionaires use astronomy, whatever it is. I don't know what the saying is. I forget it now, but it's like millionaires use astrology and, you know, billionaires use astrology, whatever, astronomy, vice versa, back and forth, whatever the saying goes. Kings have always had their advisors looking at the stars, providing, you know, advice based upon their understanding of the heavens. So yes, I think that these knuckleheads with their cigars and their baby incubator platforms and their railroads and their trains and their oil and gas snake oil crap all decided that green's going to be the color. And then that way we can attach it to their heart and then make them this 9-to-5 workforce, you know, pile on the black and white paper book printed type concept of words and, you know, program these individuals in a certain way to hijack that heart chakra. Now, all of it wasn't done in order just to hijack the heart chakra. It was the intent initially to tie your self-worth to the amount of these green piles of green things that you got. It's crazy, but it's what happened. So I don't know. Is it a causality? I don't know. I was answering Ramon on that a minute ago. I said, I think we're trying to use the paradigm we're in now to ask questions about the paradigm that was before. And that's difficult to describe it using it. You know, it's like hindsight's 20/20. I don't know.
I'll just keep it right now. Yep, probably next time.
My only my only critique here for Jonathan, for your approach, is I'd like you to start, using the MIMS philosophy more to approach, because although it is a research, and futurization philosophy, it's based in the science, and in my mind, we should be able to stretch the MIMS philosophy to the point of back hacking, reverse engineering, anything that's related to science, data, geometry, and philosophy. All those things should be back hackable, reverse engineerable. I haven't written a paper on it, but to my mind, there's no reason why that we can't use MIMS to unpack all of that and see about what I call reverse forward thinking. So going a little bit back, finding the place where the interrupt happened, such as 1927 with the end of the Enlightenment, and then going forward from there and saying, okay, so this is when, there was a battle, and, Langmuir didn't have the star power that Einstein did, and so they chose Big Bang, and that's when the interrupt began.
What's MEMS again? What's MEMS stand for again? Sorry.
The membranous interface of the material and spiritual. So the idea of the data going back and forth between the etheric or invisible and what we are actually seeing in terms of tangible results. The most obvious tangible result being industrial products. But that's not the only tangible result. Obviously, there's money, there's medicine, there's all sorts of stuff. Anything man-made is going to be closer to that than to nature, right? And that's a whole big discussion. There is the pertinent value of needing MIMS to survive versus just living off of nature. But we all know that I saw Avatar 2 recently, but the thing that kept running through my mind is we keep packaging this idea that tribalism is an improvement over life, but we know, realistically speaking, the average lifespans of these people without the better MIMS of, like, say, Qigong, yoga, Ayurveda, Chinese medicine, the reality is they don't live very long. They don't live very potent lives. They certainly have a lot more time for playing with their children, and in an ideal world, they'd have plenty of food, but that's not always true either, right? There's lots of drought and famine and starvation. And so, and the diseases, the plagues, I mean, there are benefits to the use of MIMS. It's the question is, which is the better program? There are villages in China that have been using the same water hole for 1,000+ years because of the way that they exist in an area that has horizontal rain, and then the trees filter everything out, and by the time it gets down to the village, it's pure water. Pretty interesting system, but not everywhere in the world has that ability. So what can we do to create those kinds of abilities through next to the next level permaculture and aquaponics? I believe it's all possible, but then again, we haven't dealt with the exhaust of technology, let alone, of course, there's always an output which can be controlled by anybody, right? Just like a gun, right? There's nothing particularly wrong with a gun, but the output can be controlled by the POSs of the world, and then the exhaust of urban violence is an ever-present problem. It's not as much of a problem in rural areas. We should probably explore why that is, but it might have to do with pressure. It might have to do with how close people are living to one another. It's been turned into a racial issue, which is certainly a problematic approach. But regardless, I think that we need to back hack and reverse engineer the situation and look at these program interrupts. I mean, I don't mind talking about color, odor, sound, emotion. Those are really important in Chinese medicine: color, odor, sound, emotion. But if we don't look at it from the philosophical level and how the science is interrupted and how the language is interrupted, even, I suspect that we won't be capable of actually forward engineering any better society, let alone a spacer society. One of our big challenges is figuring out why certain communes haven't worked, whereas certain ones did, like the Damanhurians. They worked. And when you look, the real core of their temples of the humankind is a very creative spirituality. Very, very creative spirituality. And I think that that's worth exploring, the difference between them and the Osho cult, for example. That's just, anyways, that's the only direction. I'd like to see more of that done in this group, in this think tank.
Yeah, I think the problem with kind of reverse engineering things and trying to determine where a disconnect occurred is, what point do you start? What references do you utilize of, the warped history? Because history is always written by the victors. And so what point do we start, with our limited ability and our limited focus, as we discussed on several occasions, every time in China, for instance, a ruler took over, the emperor just burned all of the artifacts and all of the history. Same thing with Alexandria. How many times is Alexandria burnt to the ground?
They all interrupted the society, and they would also change the dating style. Even if the previous ruler had only been installed for 2 years, that's why we can't know exactly how old China is, because they would change the dating style, and then they would name it. They wouldn't go back to the end of the last rule. They would just say today is the 0th year of such and such dynasty, and that's how they would control the program. And it's pretty genius. It's just a little bit evil, but the daggone farmers, they just want to know when to plant.
Well, and that's the thing is that,
and that only happened to us once when they put the calendar back to 0. Think of if that happened every rain, nobody would know what the hell was going on.
we say that, but we say that based upon the way that we've been taught to see the world. Had we come from the beginning, from the outset, without this crap ever occurring, and we were all operating in harmony with each other as well as the earth and the terrain and the etheric fields, I don't know that would be the same thing. I think you would be born with a higher level of understanding immediately, your ability to connect to the records of the ether, the Akashic records, the knowledge that is flowing through all things. You would have the ability to connect to this stuff from birth. You wouldn't then immediately go into what we've been sitting here describing, which is nothing more than just programming. You wouldn't have the need for programming. You would have the need to be taught how to walk, how to maybe cook, how to, maybe, tie some trees together in order to make a vine or whatever. I don't know, make a rope out of tree bark. These kind of cool things. Maybe you need to learn how to drive a vehicle or, transport from one location to the other because you need to be able to sit and meditate and concentrate harder and learn how to actually frequency surf. Physically move yourself from one location to the other without going anywhere and reappearing somewhere else. Teleport yourself, But instead, we're brought into this world and immediately inundated with programming after programming after programming, and that hinders things. And then we sit here later, you and I and Ramon are sitting here talking about how, we reverse engineer the programming. Stop fucking programming. I'm sorry. Like we sit here and say that people wouldn't be able to understand things. And I find that maybe not necessarily true. We don't know that. It's just that we've been programmed that everybody comes into this world as an idiot. Whereas we see these children that come in today in the world, you see them, man, they're smarter than me. My daughter was smarter than me. And I didn't have, she, hadn't read half the books I've read. It's intuition, insight, imagination. That's what's smart. But we've been programmed to think that your ability to memorize a bunch of useless crap inside of a black and white book is what makes you smart. And it's very difficult for us to get outside of that paradigm and into the paradigm of realizing that creativity, imagination, and just your ability to see in colors is what is actually intelligence. And if we remove the programming from the field completely, forget having to back engineer it and try to figure out where it came from and where it went wrong and how to fix it and how to continue on now with more programming in the future that's just going to be better. It's still programming, guys. Stop with the programming, and individuals that are birthed into this ethos will have free and clear connection to the entire plethora of information that is available to each and every single one of us at any time, as long as we don't have layer upon layer of programming sitting on top of us that we've got to get rid of before we can even communicate with God. Sorry, my bad. But I think I'm right about that. Anybody still there?
Sorry, I'm getting my oil changed.
But I think I'm right about that, man. You know, the programming is what causes individuals to be birthed into this world without the ability to understand truly the world with which they live. Things are going to change.
Yeah, I think they're becoming more confusing. Even though it should make a lot more sense now that we know more, it's becoming more and more confusing.
You know, it's a matter of what's right and what's wrong. And for me, it's always been, that has been confusing because of the degrees of variation. Does that make sense? You know, it's like, is it a white lie? Is it not a white lie? Is it a, you know, are you, if you're not killing somebody, then it's not that big of a deal. Right? So what is and what does constitute wrong, and what does and what is constitute right? Is it more right or less right? What's right? And, you know, I think, again, it goes back to removing the programming of schooling, removing the programming of religions, removing the programming of these things from our society and allowing nothing but, you know, understanding to be the tradition. That would push things a lot further along in the world. And it's just because we all want to just have it all figured the frick out or something. I don't know. I don't get it. I really don't. But if we were able to bring the children into this world with the powers that God gave them from the beginning, the development that would take place, you know, I think just the programming is what the problem is, you know, even if it is for the, you know, good intent to be able to teach how to operate in society. Yeah, but it's a society that was built by crusty patriarchal crackerheads, you know, that really wanted to be able to control and maintain their positions. And this concept of rulers and kings, it's like we can't get out of that either. What's wrong with us? You know, we tried our best with America. You know, we tried. And look what they did. They came in and brought corporations to maintain their bloodlines and maintain their flow of the esoteric energies into their agendas, you know, through the use of corporations.
Yep.
And now, corporations have a bigger voice than any one man will ever have. And that was never the intention of democracy, never the intention of America, a republic, democratic republic. That was never the intention of this place, was to, you know, it was supposed to be the new world. Because just that reason, that one man at the lowest level had just as much voice as one man at the highest. But they gave inalienable rights to corporations with the 13th Amendment. Inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness to a corporation who has no liability whatsoever, but yet all the responsibilities and, you know, benefits.
Yep, that's the world we live in America.
So to back engineer things, if we were to back engineer it, honestly, I mean, we truly have to go back to the time you're talking about, buddy, with the World's Fairs, the baby incubators, you know, to see truly what took place there. You know, the King James Charter, what was that? You know, how was the Moroccan king involved in that? You know, all of those things need to be truly brought to the surface. And then and only then was the fact that the incubators were because there weren't enough places for them, or because they were coming from a reset type mentality where this world had reached its pinnacle of tolerance for the BS, so to speak, which is where we're coming to now. You know, we're in a closed system, according to Bill Nye, the retard science guy. You know, and if that closed system starts constantly having energy put forward to it that's creating a higher level of pressure, they released the pressure with World War One. They released the pressure with World War Two. They released the pressure with Vietnam, the Korean, whatever. You know, and it's to distract. But now we have it where everybody's looking at our leaders, realizing that they're all a bunch of fakes, and we're all it seems the more and more people every day are crying out for relief. And if that crying out for relief hits a pinnacle, what does this planet do? I think Bouvier was talking about it like in terms of a cell. You know, new life, new planet, a cell divides. You know, and if our Earth is like that, then our Earth will divide. And that's what kind of created the moon on the first time, was the first big divide. Cataclysm after cataclysm. Plasma arc after plasma arc. You see? Are we in for another divide? Because we will not get it together as a people and stop this massive crying out for relief that keeps coming in these Mandelbrot set type fractal repeating cycles. Is the pressure just going to get to too much? But I think we do go back to the World's Fairs. That's where we have to start as far as this country's concerned. You know, to go back any shorter of a distance of time, I think is being disingenuous to what got us to, like, let's say 1927 was your suggestion. I think we have to go back a little bit further, back to the 1880 time frame, and then go forward from there.
Yeah, 1850. There was, I don't know, like I said, I'm related to President Zachary Taylor. He was the 12th president of the United States, and he was assassinated. The first president that was assassinated that I know of. And on 4th of July, it's just like a lot of the other presidents that were assassinated, or any of the other ones. I think that was the same day. But he was killed and taken out of office, and there was a lot of things going on at that time. And I think a lot of it was to make sure that we established our land here. We had to have as many heads on the ground as possible to get the Indians out 100%, right? So there was that going on. As many foot soldiers and as many families through colonialism as possible, and then colonizing the Native Americans, or they were a bit of a wild bunch, so we had to take them out. So they were a bunch. Yeah, they called them, what did we used to call the Native Americans? A lot of things.
The indigenous?
Yeah, the indigenous. We would call them wild. We would call them wild and not proper, you know, because everything was like trying to be our etiquette and manners, and everything was just being spread worldwide. Just think how Eastern European went through and made all the uncivilized humans civilized again, and taught them all the everything that they know. You know, like everything that they knew before must have not meant anything to them. We all thought of it. We all thought of it as a good plan for the Earth, is to civilize everyone and to teach them common etiquette and manners and rules, and so the Brits did that to Australia. They did that. They're doing it all over the world. You know, still to this day. There's a lot of different. There's so many different, infinite amount of ways to run societies, and we keep going back to, you know, like democracy because it worked, and it's worked before, and now that's the guise of new modern day colonialism, is democratizing the world, going from place to place and saying, well, we function like this. There's something broken with you guys. We need to fix you guys. Try this pill. And then we democratize country after country, and we force it with our naval bases and our army bases.
Yeah, it's capitalism basically hidden through the wording of democracy.
Yes. Yep. But it's worse than capitalism, because there's an endless budget. I don't even know what to call it, really. It's just printing endless money. And like they just did that thing with what's that guy? Not FTX, Bankman-Fried. That whole thing just happened, and it was all to pay the Democrats. That kind of stuff's happening all the time. You know,
some went to rhinos on the red side too, but again, that goes back to us. If we wanted to relate that in a whimsical aspect, it goes back to that the pillars, you know, concept of was it Jotham and Bo? What is the two of them, Ramon? Help me out here.
Joachim and Boaz.
Yeah, Boaz and Joachim. Those two pillars of dipolar concepts, you know, the red shift and the blue shift concept of the etheric world with which we live. You know, that those are both hijacked versions of that same exact esoteric knowledge. You know, it's why it's blue and red. You know, it's just, it is. And so those hijacked polar opposites is basically what's been running this world, because extremism, you know, and like NFL is a great example. In order to be able to beat the guy on the other side, you have to be more ruthless than the guy on the other side. But 80% of our worldly population exists in the middle. They don't necessarily want to be ruthless to the blue shift, and they don't want to be ruthless to the red shift. They want to just have, you know, the middle of the road type concept, spiritually and esoterically and physically. It's 80%. It's only the 10% on either side that believe in these extremisms of the red shift, blue shift. And the polarization has been beaten into our heads, you know, so hardcore that we think that there has to be a polarization in our activities on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, our thoughts are geared towards polarization, because we have two halves of our brain, two eyes, you know, two hands, two legs. So we see it as either or, and then until there's a better concept proposed, we'll probably see it as either or. Even if there is a better concept proposed, we'll be fighting for either or. Which is,
but just like the Vesica Pisces, it's the two polars that come together, the overlapping in the middle that creates the third, the one, the human being, the toroidal field. Yeah, the toroidal field in its homeostatic nature exists in the middle, not on either side of the polars.
Yeah, it's definitely the best way to control people's thinking. Polarized thoughts are a lot easier to control than an open mind, because it keeps your mind closed.
Yeah, because then you get into the ego stuff. You know, it's like once you've made a decision to go down this route with your life, you know, you make these egotistical decisions to say, you know, this is my identity, and I identify with this.
Yeah.
You know, not necessarily extremism. I don't want to keep using that term, but it's
identity politics. If you're an Apple guy, you're gonna identify as an Apple guy, and you're gonna show people that you're an Apple guy, because you're gonna probably drive a Prius or something.
And then the moment anybody comes forward with a Android device, you immediately rebel against it with the negative energy.
Yeah, and you identify as this brand. This brand becomes part of you, and you. Same with Michael Jordan. You know, McDonald's. It's the meme. It's mimicry through the memes, all the way down to controlling your daily habits, which could be going to McDonald's every morning, you know, or smoking that cigarette, or whatever it is. That's the memetics. It's a huge, gigantic, vibrating, contagious idea, an idea that is contagious. And I was talking about memes way before anybody even knew what they were, because I read the book Guerrilla Creativity. If you've ever heard of the Guerrilla series, Guerrilla Creativity.
Was it like guerrilla warfare type thing, but in a propaganda type way?
Yeah, basically just showing how to be super creative as fuck, like, and boiled everything down, and it started talking about memes. This guy's probably one of the main people that helped popularize what memes are through his book. I never even looked into that. I just read it and fucking went to town and started naming everything memes and the work that I was working on and telling people that, and then it just blew up. People.
And I think that the power behind a meme also goes into that speaks to the way that we've been programmed as far as our focus and our attention spans.
Yeah, because that's all it is.
Yeah,
that's all it is. It's identity politics. You want to identify with the crowd. If you don't, then you stand out and you don't know how the fight went down last night or how the game ended up. And if you don't know, then you can't be part of the conversation. You just sit there, or you talk about something else with someone on the sidelines. You know, it's about being privy to what's the word? What's relevant.
Yeah, and I think that that goes back to the Google conversation we were having a minute ago, the TikTok, the Twitter, all of these battles we're seeing taking place for supremacy in terms of data harvesting. And it's because before they were able to mandate in a certain way or control a certain way the direction that these guerrilla meme type tools at their disposal, they were able to create these energetic fields on mass scales using, whether it be 9/11 type events, or it be Super Bowls or World Cups. These energetic fields generate inside of those fields high amounts of energy that flow all over the place. And individuals such as yourself and myself and Ramon sitting here in where we're at, trying to maintain a balance of our own personal energetic fields, no matter how much we say or don't say, they get caught up in it, even if we don't even turn on a television.
Oh yeah, because people will be talking about it. Word of mouth is the greatest advertisement. How do you think?
Not just that. I think, honestly, buddy, I think that the energy flows throughout and into this cosmos, because the planet being what it is, a living being in itself in a certain way, energetically.
Yeah, it's mostly space, just like we're mostly space. And of that space,
the energy flows, man. It just flows. And if you're sitting in the woods trying to build a community by yourself, having absolutely nothing to do with it at all, you're still going to be affected by it. That's why, to answer Ramon's questions, why these communes didn't work was because of that reason. They cut themselves off from society, but that doesn't matter. The esoteric field still flows through the ground and through the ethos and into these individuals. So the desires will be there. The negative flow from that in some way will manifest itself inside of that community, whether they put up, walls or cover themselves with tinfoil. It doesn't matter. The flow still flows. And these people that run the world know this. That's
Yeah,
that's the key. That's why certain communes have failed or not failed or prospered or not prospered, is because, obviously that goes down to the sure of the individuals that were leading those particular movements, their energetic capabilities of themselves. But then I think if you research it a lot, the individuals usually proved to have some level of susceptibility to the power that came with that, the control mechanisms that came with it. And I think that speaks to the underlying issue of control, period. So whenever individuals at the highest level of authority maintain their level of control through the use of manipulation, half-truths, and flat-out lies, that even with good intent, that all of those negative things that I just listed still flow throughout the ethos. And you can't get away from that. You just can't. And that's why you have to do things in complete honesty. The concept of transparency. Everybody wants to talk about transparency, but nobody wants to be transparent. You have to maintain a high level of transparency and honesty throughout every action that you do, even if it means damaging your right now. That's the problem. Because the moment you do things outside of the realm of honesty and with, proper foundations, that no matter what, whether it's a 10-year or 100 years or whatever bicentennial of this country is, whatever it is, it's always going to end up coming back around and biting you in the ass. Because that's the way this universe rolls, man. It's a chiralic spiral of never-ending fractal repeating cycles.
Yeah, the more honest you are with yourself and everything else, the more honest the cycles are around everything around you and around everything else.
That's what I don't get,
Fractal.
It's like how easy it is to program all of these human beings. It's easy. You can sit there and program somebody in a heartbeat, basically, with the right color scheme, with the right frequencies coming out of the channels on the television. You can channel whatever you want into the brains of these people, all of us. But instead of channeling, wholesomeness and goodness and, the truth, and instead of doing things from an uplifting standpoint, they've done things in a negative way, in a way to control, in a way to maintain their positions, in a way to funnel money and greed and maintain positions of their lives instead of what was good for all of humanity and what was good for the common, just everybody. How easy would it be to just reverse that flow? You want to reverse engineer something, that's what we reverse engineer. We stop letting this programming be so negative and stop letting these individuals push forward on these hidden agendas and these lies about the world with which we live and the ground with which we stand on.
I mean, you're talking about uprooting greed, and selfishness, and that's not gonna, I don't see that going anywhere.
Why not?
Even with everybody knowing how much suffering we put everyone through, I still don't think that we would stop.
Why not? Just because it's hopeless? It's like spitting in the ocean and think the tide to rise?
I just think that the addictive nature, everything's addiction. So we're not going to get to the bottom of this until we get to the bottom of talking about addiction. And
yeah, but I think that flows from the fact of the negative energies that have been placed upon humanity, so that even when a child is born into this world, the moment that they come into existence, the flow of that esoteric field affects their formation.
It's addiction when you're it's addiction. It's all addiction. It's how you train. It's how you train your body through cyclicity and fractal patterns and the global electric circuit. A lot more people are going to go batshit crazy and are going batshit crazy because the politics, whether the energetic field is obscure or crazy or not, the politics are, and the amount of information and disinformation that's coming through. So that builds people's worldview. Then if people think it's a chaotic worldview with no pattern to existence and no purpose to it, and especially if they think that it's a digital world, they'll build their worldview off of that, and then all of a sudden people don't matter. They're just non-NPCs. They're just non-player, whatever it's called, non-character player, or there's a word for it, I forget. You know what I mean? So if people believe that we're in the Matrix, they're going to build their whole reality off of it. Then they're going to build their whole worldview, their religions, their philosophies. I definitely don't think it's a simulation universe, because if we start thinking that way, then there's non-player characters.
I just think that it's obvious that there was a time whenever we had more freedom in terms of individual creativity, and that can be seen in all of the buildings and all of the structures that were built in previous, civilizations, and the beauty that goes into those and all of that. But
it's just the way that they had to manufacture it. If they were going to manufacture it and spend their time manufacturing it, then they might as well have made it.
It's creativity is the point. I think it's creativity is the point. Is that when you free individuals from the program and the constant strain that goes along with the control-based type programming, and go to a more loving and caring and unifying way, and not making everybody so dipolar and making them choose between a red or blue shift type perception of the world, then they are free to truly connect with the esoteric, connect with the Akashic records, connect with creative source, connect with God, and then be able to choose with their own free will, which is what was intended by God to begin with in terms of free will, choose what form they want to manifest and create for the betterment of mankind, and even for their own lives.
All right, I'm back. What'd I miss? You guys were lively.
Talking about, I think that it's the whole memetics. I think memetics is the thing, and if you can start a meme, you can control the whole universe is controlled with memes, and it's memetics on every scale. So it's fractal recursion, self-similar topological transformations, these folding of these knots, if you will, and like McDonald's. Just think of McDonald's as this gigantic vibrating meme that just continues to control people's thoughts because it's there on every corner. And Coca-Cola.
As you said, meme, link, I'm on LinkedIn here. Here's Steve Jobs, quote, "In weak companies, politics win. In strong companies, best ideas win." And it's got 5,280 likes on LinkedIn.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
It's got
the best ideas.
Yesterday.
It comes down to ideas. You can always go back to that good old Joe Rogan and Elon Musk talk back in the day, the one where he's smoking a blunt, and pick up all sorts of information from that. Another thing that he said is the most dangerous thing in the world is not AI, as he was trying to make AI afraid, everyone afraid of AI. Instead, he said that it was an idea. Ideas are the most dangerous thing in the universe. I think he's
Memes were around for a while, but meme culture hadn't begun. And I remember after learning about Facebook, knowing that Facebook was shadow banning me in say 2009, 2010, I began posting memes, mostly my own creation, but sometimes I'd find ones that were good. This is before there were lots of meme generator sites and all that kind of stuff. And then pretty soon, within, I would say 6 months to 18 months, somewhere in there, everybody I knew was posting memes. And then they didn't understand memes. So they were all doing the same kind of meme, but they'd replace the words. The I see me this way and they see me this way and how it really is and all this kind of stuff. And and then because I'm one of those counterculture, punk rocker types, I got tired of it. So then I stopped doing it and I started posting text to try and get people to share, because it became cat memes almost right away. It was just nonstop cat memes. And in like 2012, I was like, Jesus Christ, what's happened? The world has become stupid. So I started using text as a mark of, people who were able to actually stop and read versus people who were just learning from cat memes. And the meme wars really got going in like 2014. And then, of course, super going because of the Trump election. And it's just really interesting because, people like us in this think tank, we're trendsetters. Like we're way ahead of our time. We're sort of like that band Anvil. They were ahead of not Anthrax, but Motley Crue and all those guys. And it's a great documentary, Anvil, the story of Anvil. But they're still making thrash metal. Or they were at the time of the documentary, and they had 50 albums or something, and they still had the crazy hair band look, and they were old. And after seeing the documentary, they were actually taken on tour by one of the bands that they inspired, and they were able to go out and open for them. So it's just interesting being ahead of the curve. Of course, here we're trying to be ahead of the curve by a few hundred years if possible. And I do think memes have a role to play in that, but memetics as a general rule, I think, is the thing that is stronger. The memes are going to evolve. The holograms.
I'm not talking about memes at all. Actually, there's a larger thing that has always been around. It's brand. It's what branding is. Brand. We were talking about branding and brand identification and becoming an Apple user and how that's how you operate versus an Android user, and the cars that they buy and how they incorporate it in their personality. Like after you get a vaccine, there's only one way to be. You're vaccinated now, so you kind of have to be on Fauci's side.
You were talking about memetics and mimicry, right?
Yeah, memetics and mimicry and memes. And that's like mirroring people's behavior. That's watching and doing. That's monkey see, monkey do. That's and that's how the McDonald's, the symbol of McDonald's, the symbol of Coca-Cola. That is what the meme is. Meme culture and making memes is kind of a separate idea, kind of a separate thing. But I'm talking about the larger memetic cycles of culture and inculcation of indoctrination.
I don't think it's separate at all. It's no different than saying an image is worth 1,000 words.
Well, if you look, even just using McDonald's as an example,
Michelangelo painting the Sistine Chapel, it's still program control. It's controlling a message. It's controlling something. The difference is the meme culture. They were, especially as it got going with the MAGA people, they felt disenfranchised. When it started on social media, it was like more fun for people to share. They wanted their voice to stand out. It just everybody was doing it, like cat memes and such, and it lost the essential that essential quality that made it stand out. But then people started creating new kinds of memes, and now you have people who are walking memes. what's that guy's name? Stein. He runs around and he makes fun of city councils and shows up at Antifa protests and outmaneuvers them in their own verbiage. And he's been on the news and doing his act, and he's hilarious. And this mimicry, I think, is really all about that program control. In the old days, painters had and sculptors had the program control, and then architecture, which has been a theme, by the way, on this show. People keep bringing up architecture. I think, Buddy, usually it's you who brings up the cathedrals and the program control through that. But it's pretty important because it gives people a sense of balance, I guess, to where if they feel disenfranchised, they feel powerless for their voice, for the sounds that should be coming out of their throat chakra, then they find another means for it to reach that level.
Well, I think, if we use the McDonald's as the primary example to start as our baseline for observation, when it comes to food and making you hungry, you have the red and yellow combination. That takes you back to your infancy. Red and yellow is the first two colors as a child that you start developing as far as the optics are concerned. Then you go look at Burger King. All of the food like In-N-Out Burger, they all share that red and yellow color scheme. Or a lot of them do, was it Coral Buffet? I don't know. You can name them. Just picture in your mind how many different restaurants and fast food joints have that red and yellow theme. And if it's not red and yellow, it's red and white. Coca-Cola, MAGA, they all share that same red and white, red and yellow color schemes. And those speak to that carnal hunger as an infant, for you desire to be back in your infancy and hungering as a child, because that's one of the only real feelings that you know. So to sit here and say that we're not having these things used against us, in order to, whether it be in terms of advertisement, but it's, the concept of memes. And I think that when we go back to the meme, when those long-term type, quote, advertising campaigns like that start failing, right? Because the energy has worn itself or run itself dry. As a society, that's the focus. Our focus got shorter and shorter. So they had to and did develop a different way. Naturally, we did. Not they, we as a people were attracted to the emotional charge that comes from that initial interaction with the meme. The quick, short jolt of dopamine that goes along with it.
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of people physically identify with the message, and that's become a danger of the meme culture and memetics. And people take on the meme as their actual identity. And
well, you're forced to.
My cousin did that, and it was disturbing. It's one of the main reasons I left Facebook. Is I was noticing you couldn't comment on the content of the meme without it hurting the relationship with friends and family. Because when they were sharing that meme, they weren't only sharing the idea. Now they were sharing part of their identity. You talk about the quality of the content, and you put up a boundary to protect your own mind against the power of that meme, and just automatically the meaning I completely agree, and without commentary, without critique, without protest. And then they are personally hurt, and then they begin attacking you, and you go, wow, that's really unhealthy and toxic. So the memes there is not extremely well developed, and it's because it's become it's evolving as a response instead of evolving through proaction. And whenever that happens, you never know it's going to be not be that beneficial.
Ramon, this is actually how we got into the conversation, talking about polarizing people's thoughts, and that's how you enter the meme. You have to polarize their thoughts, and they already know it's either this way or that way. So that's an opportunity to start a company or start a name or start a brand, and then there within starts the beginning of the meme and culture. I
want to critique this idea. I mean, there's a lot of people like Yahoo, right? They began that way, but The problem is that's not really what brand is. Brand is reputation and promise, which has a visual aspect. And a lot of these like bands and stuff, they start their brand that way and quickly lose control of their brand, and they often lose it to the enemy. I mean, in Google's case, they lost it to the people. They said, "Don't be evil," and they lost their brand to evil people, and they're not even involved in the company anymore. And you know, the whole Twitter brand. There are so many pejoratives about Twitter. I mean, they've completely lost control of
well, you're talking about mottos versus brands, and mottos.
I'm not.
Branding.
No, I'm not. No, I'm talking about brands. I'm talking about brands, and brand reputation is incredibly important to protect. And the only way you can protect it is to control the image of that brand. The reputation and the promise that is made has to be protected. And if it's not, the brand is lost, and the image becomes a shell of what it originally was.
Right. And we were talking about how this is in culture and how this is in sociopolitics, society, the social media. It's everywhere, and that's how you polarize someone and get them to think a certain way.
Memetics is definitely a powerful tool. Psychologists use it for
it's on all scales. I think the relevance of this is really important because people don't understand as much as what I'm talking about here, and what we're all talking about is that it's on all scales. It's in everything. So you see the memetics of it, you see the recursion of it, you see the habit of it, you see the habitual nature of it, all the way from when we're babies, we're habitual. It's about habits and controlling them, and creating new habits and new environments for new habits to thrive. This is what creativity is. New hardships that build the person's character to become resilient and
the primal natural core for memetics and for what was the word I was looking for? The primal core for both the things, I can't remember what the other word is for the moment, but it's camouflage. Because in nature, you can the animal can mimic another the look of another animal, a completely different species, to get the same result.
Right.
Provide protection, and also, of course, they can blend.
How does it do that? Through intention, through it's not necessarily through survival of the fittest. It's deception. It's deception, warfare, deception. We've talked about this.
The aspect of survival of the fittest, like take the false black widow. It looks like a black widow for a reason. It keeps certain animals from eating it. But the question is, how would that actually come about without a consciousness behind it? But it's not their consciousness. It's not the spider's consciousness. It's a greater consciousness that is co-programming both species.
When I think of mimicry, I think of sex dances and birds, and how birds mate through a dance. That's a way, and it's learned knowledge that's taught and also by the. I watched one of this David Attenborough Color, and it's a Color series, Color Throughout Nature, and they had this new bird that I've never seen before do this dance, and it was just incredible. It was absolutely incredible. And if they have one step off in the dance, they're not exactly sure what is the determining factor in the dance for the selective selection and the mating. Yet, like, there's determining factors in how you move, how you oscillate, how you gyrate, how you shake them tail feathers, and the youth, the young male birds are there watching the male do the dance to learn how to do it just right. They're extremely cognizant, and bird brains are something really interesting. A lot of this leads to bird brains. There's something in my head that definitely leads to the amount of neurons in bird brains is a lot larger than they thought, and they're a lot more intelligent. that
I
we
think
need
it
to think.
also, their navigation skills are also very much an indicator of their ability to, receive signals from the, the electromagnetic field at a much different rate than we can possibly even imagine.
Right. But I really like what Ramon was saying and bringing it back to nature, because that's my basis. That's usually the baseline for me, is if you can observe the stuff in nature, you can observe it in atoms. You can see like attracts like. Why does like attract like? Because those atoms vibrate on, they vibrate and attract and pull together and create what we see.
A guy that was he had taken a wave pool in Japan, I think, and it created, inside of a pool, created the waves at exactly the same height going in, two different directions. And the coolest little phenomenon occurred where they synchronized. The waves all synchronized together. And so you had the whole pool doing its, in unison, the same motion, the same exact thing. And it was like so much similar to how what you would conceive a basic, like the heart mind beating and the toroidal field pulsing. It was almost exactly that, image that if you had to imagine it, it was exactly what was taking place there on the surface of that water. It was amazing. But it's the waves, attracting like. It's because once two similar functioning waves come together, they magnify one another. They go in harmony, and that creates, what is, in my mind, is the beginning of manifestation.
Yeah, they create standing waves, and they create. I saw a Veritasium where they did the largest pool in the world, the Olympian pool, and they are able to control the waves perfectly, all different size waves, peaks and troughs, and it's a cool episode. Kind of reminds me of what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I think going back to the, animal kingdom and utilization of camouflage, I think that, yes, we can see things in nature, and we just, as humans, I don't think that we have to repeat that same kind of behavior in order to survive. I don't, though it's existing, I don't feel the need for it to be there. I think that it's because of this bipolarization or whatever dipolarization of society that has occurred, to where, the individual bloodlines and leaders of the world have decided that in order to keep us in line, the best way to do that is to keep us divided. That is what creates then our need to maintain some level of camouflage or act in, a butterfly or whatever, hidden kind of in the dark kind of way or whatever. I
think we learned everything from nature, and even our language comes from nature. And if you look at the whole body of everything, if it's like light is God in its many forms. Light unfolding and its profundity, in its many forms, is God. God has its purpose and hand in everything. So if you look at it like that, the whole system, agriculture comes from us observing ants and farming fungus, and us observing the animals dropping seeds and plants that come from the seeds. I mean, our whole philosophy, everything is based off of nature. And then you have the anti-nature philosophies, because we know what nature is. Therefore, once you know parts of what it is, you can be anti-nature and go against the grain. But nature offers the brutal reality of how hard it is to actually survive. It's unforgiving. It's unrelenting. It's a scary dog eat dog world out there, and that's what pulls communities together, because you got to survive. All in general. So watching things in the mimicry on all scales, and the mimicry of atoms, and quantum physics and everything, our observation of it, understanding the rules, then reanimating the rules so that we can work off of the rules is mimicry. All schooling is mimicry. Every field of inquiry and knowledge, that's all it is. It's observing the larger scales of nature and how they break down on all scales, and repeating it, having a fractal economy, having a fractal understanding of fractal universe. I mean, these rules are implicit in the structure. Chaos breaks down to very simple rules.
So I'd like to bring in the Avatar 2. Have you guys seen it yet?
No.
No, okay. I don't want to ruin it, so I'm going to just speak about a couple of little items out of it. Speaking of mimicry, in the movie, there's some wailing, and I don't want to ruin the plot, obviously, but one of the devices that's used by the sky people, the humans, right? Which the entire thing might be there to program us all to hate humans, but at any rate. So we do know humans do wail currently, even though they shouldn't. One of the devices they use is this crab-like robot. It moves. Of course, there's a person inside of it. And then there were all these, not the animals that were analogs to what we have on Earth. And all of it is designed to initiate certain thoughts and feelings inside of you about our behavior here on this planet, B, our future, C, what future technologies can exist, and utilizing the mimicry of nature in a lot of ways. In particular, there's a ship that gets turned over when it's upside down, looks like a dead whale. It's a fascinating thing because it's happening both on purpose, because they're artists who are doing this, they're designing it to create it and elicit certain responses, and it's also happening by accident in that there are patterns that repeat because that is like all people are able to think about. And one of the ones that was the most interesting to me is, and I said this to my girlfriend, I said, do you think that because they get the top astronomers and physicists to basically consult on these giant movies where they spend $1 billion to make the movie. Do you think that they aren't aware that we used to surround Jupiter and that it's possible when this entire planet in the movie is an Earth-like planet that's going around a gas giant that's going around a star? They know that there's enough energy coming off of these gas giants to be the equivalent of a dwarf star. I said, we used to have a dwarf star, but then eventually we did surround Jupiter. And although our orbit wasn't clean and our going in and out created frost giants and then created fire giants and all this kind of like heat and drought issues and thunderbolts, but we were able to survive. It's not impossible. So when they tell us it's impossible for us to have been around Jupiter or Saturn, but then they make the movie that shows you that it's possible and that they're simulating. By the way, they're making an Oppenheimer movie, and in it they are recreating the nuclear tests that happened, and the CG on them looks amazing. It looks better than the original, but it looks just like the original. And it's that trailer for Oppenheimer is quite intense. I definitely recommend it. But this mimicry of our world, but on Pandora, and you got to wonder: is James Cameron trying to redirect us towards a better way of life because he hung out with the shamans down in the Amazon? Or is the system once again trying to program interrupt to create a certain version of the future because the humans in this film are even more disgusting than the humans in the first film? And I don't want to ruin the plot, but when you see it, you'll understand why. I mean, it's a really disgusting behavior. But anyhow.
Well, that is mimicry. I mean, did Mel Gibson really want to create a new future for us in creating Apocalypto? And the most watched, most money made film, R-rated film to this day is Mel Gibson's Passion of the Christ. I mean, this is mimicry. This is propaganda is mimicry. You know, monkey see, monkey do. You show something and people see it. It makes them feel a certain way. They either act it, or they embody it, or it becomes a like part of the cult, the culture. Like Star Wars, like Disney, like Salvador Dali, like artists. Artists have a style. They're certain stylistic. They become a meme. And now AI is just taking their artwork and painting things in the style of their artwork and the likeness of their name. You know, in the likeness.
Back to the Jupiter issue, and then these guys having some esoteric knowledge that they're slowly allowing to be exposed. There's multiple movies, whether it's Thor, God of Thunder, and Zeus, and, the references back to Jupiter in multiple ways. You got, there was another one that came out. It was, I think, called Jupiter, actually. But there was, again, the same superhero type concept. I don't know. I mean, honestly, my opinion, and it's nothing that I'll ever probably be able to prove without the same 60 whatever something $1 million a day budget that NASA's got. But, I think the luminaries are burned out or positioned suns from previous times. And so when Jupiter was in our quote unquote firmament, or within our vicinity, and providing so like right now, the sun provides, in my opinion, and I won't ever be able to prove this either, but the sun is what provides us the oxygen as it, traverses through the atmosphere. It creates through the plasma arc and through the traveling of basically like inside of a sapphire chamber, you have the resonating alignment that occurs, and inside of there, all the elements just go into straight alignment underneath the quote vacuum. Well, we exist inside of that same kind of format, except the layering is moved as that sun traverses across our sky, and then that creates and generates the O2, separating the H3 from the upper layer to the O2 for us here, and then down to the H2O in the water level. So through evaporation, as well as the sun, burning in our atmosphere in a plasma state, creates the oxygen with which we breathe. Now, we've all been led to believe through this green energy movement, the trees are what create all of our oxygen. It doesn't create it, it scrubs it, cleans out the crap, but it doesn't create it. So if we had a planet of a different size, it would explain the giants, not a planet, but a luminary that was in position, generating a different volume of either O2 or even in a different consistency to create even, our skin to be blue, similar to Avatar. Having us be giant-sized individuals, such as what we saw in the 1800s, multiple reports, Smithsonian's, kept under wraps, but were reported in the local newspapers that you can find now. Even you can find them forever, but, giant bones dug up, mounds. These mounds were, based upon individuals that were much taller than they were. You got constant proofs through photographs of individuals of just unusual sizes, and that comes from a previous era of the megafauna. I mean, Ramon, you've written papers about the megafauna concept. It's humans were just different based upon the magnetic field generated from the luminary that was in position above our heads at that time. And here we are now inside of this cycle with this sun, having these conversations about these things, when individuals that control and maintain this knowledge base of our previous known history have made these facts all very clear and well, and can shed some light on the subject if they.
I think that they understand a lot of it. I don't think they understand it quite as well as we do, to be honest with you. But I wrote the EPEMC evolution. One of the that the messy that I wanted to convey in my personal evolution section, which I think I'm opening it right now. I think it was before the other is I put the number back on one iteration of my life and around the current iteration. But
can't hear, buddy. Can you hit mute, buddy? I can't. I'm sorry. I'm getting like broken.
Sorry,
No, it's all good. I just can't hear.
I wasn't around my phone. My bad.
No worries.
Initial iteration in my life where the system had me, I made sure to put that in a separate box than where I currently am, to create that dichotomy of dividing between when I was born and the system, the Discovery Channel, the public education, the Earth Day kid, all this stuff that came from socialized education controlling the programs that I interacted with in there. I wanted to contain that because that's where my life started as a child versus where I am now. So the size of the box is also important. It's just visually that entire graph. I thought figure 1 was very important to understanding figure 2.
Again, it goes back to honesty in the sense of, I hear what you're saying. They may not know, but I think that I just find it hard to believe that there are not at least it's the same. I mean, knowledge is power, period. And all we have to do is track back, where the money flows, follow the money, so to speak, and you'll see where the power flows from. And once you have that power flowing from those individuals, not group, but you go high enough, you always come to one guy, period. And whether that dude's sitting in a chair with a white robe on over in Italy, or he's hidden in some mansion on an island somewhere off the coast of Malta, I don't care. But you follow the money back far enough, you come to one dude. And that's the dude we all deserve to have answers from. Period. It's that simple. We could sit here and try to sugarcoat it for them all day long, but in the reality of things, there has been unequivocally the use of knowledge to maintain power. And we can create our own all day based upon assumptions and unknowns, but that's going to take another 100 years, like you just described a second ago, Ramon. And honestly and frankly, I don't think humanity has another 100 years to sit here and try to weather this stupid storm of stupidity. We just don't, because we are going downhill. You watch these videos of these guys walking up to individuals on the streets of New York asking simple questions. Simple questions, and they can't answer them. The young people of today just can't answer simple questions. We've dumbed down society to the point where they just don't care. And we're on a precipice, man. So it's a precipice on a very, very thin line. It is. There's no doubting that.
And the comedians, the so-called comedians, are just making fun of it, all of it, which makes us not care even more. It makes us just, look at it as, oh, well, that's that. Let's move on.
Yeah, I mean, and that goes to you go to the jester concept in the courts, in the halls of the kings. The jesters come in and all the people sit there and laugh and giggle and laugh and giggle. But yet they don't realize, wait a minute, George Carlin is saying some things here.
Yep, they all are. They're all saying exactly what's going on. And it's part of making light of it so that we don't care about it. And we just shrug it off. We're like, yeah, that's exactly the way it is. Man, that guy knows what he's talking about. And then we just go and drink our next beer and eat our next burger.
Yeah, but see, I will say that in defense of Ramon's comment back to 100 years, we're predicting the things for at least projecting things for 100 years to come. I will say that I'm convinced utterly now that should it go to where everybody just were to wake up overnight, where everybody just realizes the amount of massive lies that have been told to them since their inception, since their birth, and then their parents' birth, all of these lies that have been constantly fed to them, and then they swallowed it and then made their entire careers and their entire sweat and blood and intent and everything towards these lies, that the realization of that setting in will have much more of a detrimental effect upon society. You talk about individuals not giving a crap. The moment they're taught and told that they've been lied to all these times about this thing, they're never going to trust another thing out of anybody's mouth. Right now, science is being put to the test at the highest of levels. The concept of science is being tested, which is great because they used that as a tool, just like they did religions, which was wrong. They should have never done that. They stuck their toe in water they shouldn't have been sticking their toe in. The purity of this world, the purity of science, the purity of knowledge, they sat there and used it against humanity, which humanity is science. We are the development of creation, period. And these fools sat there and stuck their toe in the water thinking they could play with it. Go back to the stories of Iki and Anil for all I care, if you need an analogy of what I'm trying to say. But there it is. You can't clone folks. You can't hijack consciousness. You can't alter DNA. That's God's purview. Tower of Babel type stuff will come down on your head if you do.
Oh, no, that's probably true. I mean, you can, but there's consequences, is what you're saying.
I mean, we're seeing those consequences now.
Yeah, and however you were using the means of whatever you were using to get there is probably destroyed in the process too.
Yeah, and all aspects of it. I mean, you look at it now. We could sit here and say that NASA provided good things to humanity. Yeah, I guess they did, but only to benefit their agendas and only to benefit the folks that got them there to begin with, or the ones that funneled money into their organizations. And I hate to keep harping on just NASA, but they're the greatest example right now. You can go with SpaceX for all I care. How many people right now are being provided jobs and money and positions and wealth and being able to live off of the backs of what SpaceX is generating? And then they're spitting rockets over to Bermuda, wherever the hell they're spitting rockets to, making it look like, oh, look what we did. You ain't done jack. But they've got us all living in Plato's cave thinking that they shot a rocket and made it land again. Look how cool that. I mean, come on, man. Who cares? What the hell is that for? Nothing. It's accomplished zero. But it's given these individual groups and people that work there at these locations jobs, and that's funded their lives and helped their children and families. Can you imagine all those people waking up tomorrow realizing, man, what the hell have we been doing? We've been perpetuating a fraud upon society. That's what they've been doing. And yet, if they woke up to that tomorrow, all at once, it would be a bad, bad thing for this world. Because it's like too big to fail. You talk about the banks big or the other.
I don't mind that you're complaining, but let's try again. Once again, I just want to redirect. Through the MEMS, where do you want to go, rather than where are we now? Go back, then go forward.
Right. So in order to go forward, we truly have to manifest the creative aspects of humanity. We have to encourage the creative aspects, not encourage the greed. We have to encourage as a societal function.
I want to get an image.
What's that?
Truck is in the mud, and you want to turn on the 4-wheel drive, and it's still not going forward. Sometimes you have to go back out of the mud to go forward through it. So the question is, how do you want to go back to go forward? How do you want to reverse
or you could go get a big, huge board and stick it in there. You can go get sand. There's multiple ways things are stuck from mud. My point is,
how would you get out of the truck without sinking and dying in the quicksand? And that's the truth. If you stop the Federal Reserve System right now, people will die. If you stop the chemical pharmaceutical industry, people will die. If you stop the Dow chemical and agricultural system, people will die. If you stop the logistics supply chain, people will die. If you stop the oil industry right now, people will die. So, unfortunately, just jumping out and to go grab a board while you're in the quicksand is not a viable option. We've got to utilize the vehicle that we have. That while we're allowed to even have that vehicle, by the way, because they'd love to take the vehicle away even.
Right. So that goes back to the concept of it's just too big to fail. So we should all throw our hands up, and if we can't beat them, we might as well join them. And that drives me freaking insane. And I hear what you're saying. There's no other choice because otherwise everybody's going to die anyway.
If you're in a truck and it's in the middle of a big bog, you jump out. I mean, you have no idea. There might be alligators. You don't know. No one knows because we evolved in this direction as a society. We probably did leave nature behind. Industrialization, colonization, skip forward. We are where we are. And we got 60-year-old trains. Those are eventually going to fail. You know, it's going to be Atlas Shrugged out there. So how do we go forward? And how do we go forward together? Because they're saying, well, I guess the only way forward is for most of you to die. I don't find that acceptable because it so happens that their family bloodlines are supposed to survive because I guess they're better than us, and ours are supposed to die off. I don't agree. I'm sorry. I just don't agree that that's the way forward. And, well, I'm not really sorry. One of those sorry, not sorry situations. And I also don't agree with the commies that the way forward is, well, you can only have the same stuff that I have. Well, no, because I don't work the same. I'm not as lazy as you are. I work harder than you. So I want more for commensurate to my production. So how do we go forward? How do we design to go forward while we're in this vehicle? Because it is out in the middle of the bog, and maybe it started off on flat ground and went through some mountains and all that other shit. The 20th century is a very complicated century to teach. Historically, there's never been a century with more that happened in a single century than the 20th century. And coming out of that, it's obvious that we are mired. We're in a quagmire. And we've got to go forward. And right now, I'm not even convinced we have four-wheel drive. To be frank with you, I really think that we have one wheel spinning in the mud, maybe two, maybe.
Right. And the only thing I can say is that you're never going to beat an opponent without getting as directly or equally ferocious as they are willing or currently being.
Oh, well, I agree with you there. Yeah, I agree with you there. But that's the martial artist side of me. And the point of a think tank is not to end up with the result of let's all do martial arts. Then you guys just need to move to where I'm at and study martial arts. I'll teach you all the deadly stuff I know.
No, see, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about removing their vehicles that are feeding this negative energy flow. You talk about removing the Federal Reserve. Well, then maybe that might be what needs to happen, Ramon, because all that's doing is an energetic flow to perpetuate the consistency of the mud. And get them more, so in order to be ferocious, they created something like the Federal Reserve. Well, then we have to end it, or they created something like the frickin', propaganda machine on Hollywood, then we need to end it. That's the answers to these things, not sitting here trying to come up with new and creative ways to counteract societal woes. It's to end the ones that are currently slapping us in the frickin' face on a 24/7 basis. We have to stop that first.
But if you don't use force, you're not going to. That's what I'm telling you. There's no way to attack those directly. You can't take over the Pentagon. You can't take over the Federal Reserve, the IRS, any of them. They are all stacked to the teeth with violent programs and protected by a police state, wrapped up in a police state wrapper. So that is not a viable method. So
yeah, they've spent the better part of the last 2 decades ensuring their safety through FEMA and making sure that the people who are in power will stay in power.
Even NASA has a SWAT team.
Yeah, and I hear you guys. I understand exactly what you're saying. I just,
Wildlife literally doesn't even need a warrant to enter your house.
Yeah.
The Jesuits are the army for the Catholic Church, and every organization has an army, whether we know it's their army or not. Nowadays, you have to have an army. I wonder what Google's army is called.
Don't know, but my point is that
CIA, NSA,
all 3-letter agencies is Google's.
Best thing that
all of them
is leverage a philosophy that is better than theirs, so that people can mimic that philosophy. And that's why I designed it to be, or I mentioned that it needs to be designed. We're only in the pre-engineering stages right now with the philosophy there. It needs to be plug and play. If it's not plug and play, we won't win the meme war, right? YOLO will win the meme war because YOLO is easy to say and it's easy for kids to do. And Coors Light or whoever came out and they're like, I'm up for whatever. You know, it's like I turned to my brother at the time. It was many years ago now. I was like, I'm up for jumping off a bridge. You know, they'll win because of how plug and play it is. And the brand that they have already enables that vehicle to go forward. But it's the underlying YOLO philosophy. Why are people having that Dionysian philosophy? It's because already we have a Dionysian background, and it's called after the fall of the megalithic period and before the rise of the religious period, that transition period, people were doing whatever. I mean, there were no gods in the sky except for the moon, so you worship that and do some heart sacrifice and have some war for 400 years. So we're already pre-programmed to live this YOLO way. So if we're going to beat it, we've got to have a plug and play philosophy that is better. And I think that's where Buddy's advantage is, because he uses art. I use diagrams and diagrammatica, but he uses art, and art and music are really, really powerful vehicles. So we've got to come up with a lot of things in this pre-engineering stage of the MEMS philosophy if we're going to actually win that war without force.
Well, and I think that speaks to characters such as Alex Jones being in the mainstream as much as he has been. You know, he utilized his voice, you know, in that strong, powerful rhetoric type way to push forward on certain aspects that are now, you know, everybody's looking at it like, well, dang, dude, you yelled and got all red in the face, but a lot of what he said had some level of merit. Now that, again, it goes back to the concept of the etheric field. You know, you talk about having a philosophy that kind of preaches or speaks to or has a plug and play kind of aspect. The good news, I think, the good feelings that I get is that humanity is always maintained through the teachings of, you know, shaman, through the histories of the Native Americans, through the, you know, Aboriginal tribes, through the different groups in small pockets across the world, has maintained a certain connectivity to that type of a conceptual aspect of, you know, what you're talking about, that plug and play concept of, you know, being at one with nature and understanding your role here. And, you know, but, you know, it's just, everything just got so far off track. It really did. It truly just got so far off track that in order to bring it back into alignment, that, you know, it almost takes a divine intervention, quote unquote divine intervention. But it's, again, I think just like everything moves and the universe moves in a spiral, chiralic, fractal type motion, you know, the planets will align and the energies of this universe will come into either one or two ways. Either it's a reset or it's a pushing out of those negative forces and the ability, like I've said before, you know, the lies that these individuals are telling are just losing their juice because that energetic field is being replaced with a more, as we move through this time, this Aquarius age, or whatever you want to semantically label it, we're moving into a time when the field is not conducive to those concepts any longer. Concepts of manipulation and lies and things, you know, those energetic fields are no longer plug and play like they have been in the past. The energetic field will move to where it's plug and play into light, love, harmony, alignment, and these things. And so as philosophies like you're describing being developed are allowed into the mainstream voice, it is so much easier for the natural plug and play to exist for each individual. That's what I feel. So that's what I think is the good news about all this stuff that's taking place, is that, you know, there is divine intervention taking place in the sense that the basic electromagnetic energetic field is coming into a different, a reset, so to speak, an awakening, a revelation, all of these things that have talked about through multiple religious connotations and contexts and documents. But it's just another cycle that we're entering into now, where the juice just won't be there for these negative forces.
Yep, it's a new Yuga cycle.
So I hear what you're saying, Ramon. I'm agreeing with you 100%, buddy. I do. I agree. I also think that, patience is a virtue, so to speak. But man, it's hard. It's hard to maintain
it's hard.
sense of patience whenever so many people are suffering all the time at the hands of such just weak-minded and weak-willed individuals.
Well, there's also a possibility that the mind field, so to speak, has been going through a minefield in that the current etheric setup, the from the solar system electric circuit to the magnetosphere of Earth to maybe even a whole pocket in the galaxy may not be that conducive to deep thinking, to success, to positivity, to expanded consciousness, to expanded visual awareness. It may be that it's actually a contractual phase. And because we don't have billions of dollars flowing towards the study of change theory, we don't have any way of putting all that together unless we were to take what's been developed through meteorology and apply that to a much grander vision, much grander sphere. It's kind of amazing that they know that the weather is going to drop 30 degrees here in a few hours on such and such a date between this hour and that hour. I'm sitting there going, Jesus, that is an advanced science. How do they know that? Because wind is very random. So the way they know is because they've been applying enough data aggregate and through machine learning, and they do know now. You and I, Jonathan, found this out through looking at Hurricane Nicole, and that'll be a paper forthcoming that they are aware, at least tangentially, if not directly, of the electrogeometeorology and the fields, how they're interacting with the weather systems. So now they just have to apply that same level of care to something beyond. And it's obvious who funded that. I mean, we both know that it's not just the government funded that. The insurance companies are who funded knowing that much detail, because otherwise no one would care enough, right? Who cares? It's going to rain, blah, blah, blah. They care because they want to know how to model their insurance prices. They want to know where on the coast the hurricanes are likely to strike and the tornadoes and the floods. So that's where all of the motivation comes from, is that the insurance companies got together to because the government, they only care insofar as tactical advantage, and maybe FEMA possibly, but mostly I'm pretty sure it's the insurance companies that provided the funding for that level of growth and scientific exploration. So now if they would just care enough to apply that to everything, we could find all sorts of shit. We could find out the moods of cows and when is there's going to be too much milk. And instead of, dumping milk or paying farmers to not make milk, maybe we just, tune the knobs this way or that way on the economy. I mean, seems to me that's a smarter way to exist. But
a lot of that science leads directly to sound therapy. As far as cows go, and playing music for cows as they're in their pens, they produce like 10 times more amount of milk if you play music for them. So there's a lot of that simple science that comes down to sonobiology, which is just playing music in the forest to create a healthy forest. Playing music that sounds like birds and life forms, and playing a healthy coral reef. The sound of a healthy coral reef builds a healthy coral reef. So that's mimicry right there. And if it comes down to just simple sound science and sound healing, I'm all about it. Let's figure it out. Let's get let's figure out a way how to get the insurance companies to cover that.
Well, that goes back and just like,
I'm interested in the natural flux. Like, when will the cow produce more? When will the plants grow better with the moon? At what phase of the moon? All of this data that could be used in this way. It's obvious that they could do it if they applied rigorous.
Farmer's Almanac says all that shit.
Yeah, what frequencies are the best? And I think we can relate that back again. It goes back into the biological side of things and cymatics and all these things. But to bring up architecture again real quick, I mean, ancient civilizations and these cathedrals and such were all obvious resonators of sound healing devices. There's no other way to describe them. They provided sound energy healing for the population around that area that had chosen to move into the cities and the areas around the cathedrals versus living out into nature. So it's obvious that that's what they are. So and they're shaped in certain ways to mimic, from what I can tell, the hydrogen atom. I think underneath different cymatic resonating signatures. I don't know that for sure, but it's just a hypothesis more than anything. But yeah, it goes back to we've talking to the architecture of things. We've had these technologies available to us in the past. We've had this knowledge in the past, and we utilized it at a great scale. And to have it taken away from us and replaced with negative stuff is what we're now coming out of. We're trying.
Well, and that comes down to the promoters of the feng shui, the new styles of architecture, interior, the modern. It's so stale. It's so simple and boring, and the houses, the interior designs look like no one's living there, and it's just they promote this as a comfortable living space because it's really cheap to make. So instead of promoting a comfy living place based off of beauty like we used to, like, I want to live there because that's gorgeous, because that's beautiful. This is the town I want to live in because the architecture just speaks to me. Now it's like, this is the building I want to live in because it's simple. I don't have to cut the lawn. I don't have to mow the lawn. It's a duplex. It's built really simple. I don't care how long it lasts. I'm only going to be here for so long. That's just the mentality.
All of that goes back down to the original, format of the programming that we receive in our current state. If you look at individuals back in, times when these cathedrals were built, or even before, whenever we have any kind of real knowledge about that, what kind of creative world did you have there? I mean, you've got marble statues and proof of different pieces of art that were just created during those times that were just something you can't even hardly come close to reproducing today. And it was done at such a magnanimous scale. It was almost as if everybody was participating in it. But for some reason, they were all wiped from the face of the earth by warmongering horde of whatevers, and we see that time and time again in multiple concepts of civilization. So again, it goes back to the cycles and things like that. Guys, I'm sorry, but I've got to jump off. I've got to run out at the door to go run an errand, and I've got to be there by 12:30. So I've got to get off the phone, man. I'm sorry.
No, all right. We can wrap up the show. It was like a 3-hour show.
The geometric view is a love is watching product. Love is watching being. Thank you for doing that. Keep your eyeballs out. Pay attention. There's a lot going down this year. Be vigilant. Be mindful. Be insightful. Be loving. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being kind. Share the love. Spread the love. Become the love. Amen.
the grittiest of life, I'm there. Through the grimiest and the grittiest of life, I'm there. Through the grimiest and the grittiest of life, I'm there. Through the grimiest and the grittiest of life, I'm there.
Eyes all over the wall, eyes all over your body. Can I just see straight through with transparent golden scaling? The largest of the atom must embark on this because this is the journey. The journey is life. Take hold. Here we go. 3, 2, 1.
Join us in the fight for Christ, in the fight to save lives. Surprise, submersible, so fast, the first, the last of baptism. Need to say more. Pay attention like the marrow in your bones, arrow in your back, arrow in your lungs, zero into the back, tertiary Christian neurons, synapses and narrow entrance into eternity. I'm a courier, a charismatic attitude, meters even meter, it might even be fun. Cider indeed, need nerds, you need nerds, need a virtue, need to be a reason. Feasibility to be is a reason to be clean and sober, keys, open doors, signs of directions. Be the carrier of candlesticks, the man who brought you change. Every second you ride, until make the ribbon, you pivot, potential, you could be cat, could be cold, could be copycat, could be copy corpse, could be Schrodinger's best, could be micro-actor, Mackie normal, open-minded, itsy-bitsy, freaking huge, a universal supermassive aspect of attached awareness. Aware of this all? Collaborative consumption. Are you aware of this all? Collaborative consumption. The new thing consumption. Collaborative consumption. Consumption.
Get up now! Out of the boat! Drop! Where did it go? We don't got about not about a girl, but about it, not about a god of spirit. Get up, what's up? Get out, top girls. Spirit, red, black, and on what's up?
I'm in search of, I'm in earth love, I'm in living life, I'm in living color, I'm an airdrop, I'm an earth thing, I'm an earth thing, I'm an earth thing, I'm an earth thing. up, never give 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 up, never